Chapter 2320. Just then, Chen Zhao realized that his body was being energized. Lilith's spell had forcibly turned Chen Zhao from an energy body to a solid one. However, Lilith's spell didn't last long on Chen Zhao. When Chen Zhao's body was completely energized, he turned into a beam of light. What? Oh no, my spell lost its effect. Hurry up and make him solid again. This time, Chen Zhao wouldn't give Lilith a chance. Chen Zhao attacked the ethereal Lilith first. However, the moment Chen Zhao got close to Lilith, a barrier separated Chen Zhao from the ethereal Lilith. It was a wholly defensive barrier. Wholly defensive spells had always been the strongest in all magic systems. In particular, there were a few wholly defensive spells that were known to be indestructible barriers. Of course, there weren't any indestructible barriers in this world. In the past, there were only such legends because no one had reached the upper limit. The barrier in front of Chen Zhao was the immortal barrier. It was said to be a holy spell that could block all evil. However, Chen Zhao didn't hesitate at all. He crashed into the barrier head-on. There was no violence. Billions of tons of force instantly spread on the barrier. The immortal barrier shattered like a mirror. Behind the immortal barrier, Lilith and Light Lilith spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Light Lilith was hurt because the immortal barrier she'd created with all her magic was shattered by Chen Zhao's brute force. Lilith was hurt because she'd been hit by the shockwave of the immortal barrier shattering. When the ethereal Lilith saw that Chen Zhao had turned into a stream of light and appeared before her, she understood that it was all too late. The only thing Lilith could do was open her arms. With a relieved smile, she seemed to have given up struggling. However, Chen Zhao didn't plan to kill her. At least, he didn't plan to kill her directly. Chen Zhao grabbed Lilith's face. Dark lava surged out of his palm and seeped into her mouth, nose and ears. Only then did Lilith react, but it was too late. The dark lava seeped into Lilith's body and took over everything. At the same time, it erased all of Lilith's self-awareness. Because of the activation of the soul key, Chen Zhao had the ability to devour soul fragments. When Chen Zhao wiped away Lilith's consciousness in the void, her soul also disintegrated. The fragments of her soul were naturally devoured by Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao obtained the truth about Lilith from her soul. The expressions of the other three Liliths changed drastically. Dark Lilith was completely devoured by the dark magma. The swordsman Lilith was nailed to the ground with her arms cut off. Lilith was completely controlled by Chen Zhao. Perhaps the strengthening type Lilith was the best choice. Although she was instantly killed by Chen Zhao, her power returned to her sisters. The remaining three Liliths were Liliths who could release endless magic through countless palms. She was the first Lilith to appear. Although she had been on the battlefield the longest, she only had half of her body left. The other two were Holy Light Lilith and Elemental Lilith. Chen Zhao glanced at the remaining three Lilith. Finally, his gaze landed on Holy Light Lilith. She was the real Lilith, the original body. More accurately, she was the original Lilith. The other Liliths also had Lilith's consciousness and thoughts, but they weren't the original Lilith. Before becoming a part of Lilith, the other Lilith had once been an individual with their own thoughts and consciousness. All of them had one thing in common. They had once awakened the nirvanic power. They were all nirvanic witches. They had all awakened on the second night, but they had all failed. On the brink of death, they accepted Lilith's conditions. They had to become a part of Lilith and exist as Lilith. The 7 Liliths were the former 7 nirvanic witches. They had existed in different eras. The so-called nirvanic witches had originally come from the church. Nirvanic witches represented abnormality and went against common sense. Nirvanic witch Lilith, the first witch. Who would have thought that she came from the church? She had once been a devout nun, but after she awakened, she had been used by the church of that era. Shamanism and Druidry had lost their foundation because of her attack. Shamanism, in particular, had almost been destroyed by her. But it was also during that process that she had broken away from the church's control. She had started the Dark Ages in Europe. She had made people understand what a demon was for the first time. Except for the original Lilith, the other Liliths could only be regarded as nirvanic witches, or Lilith's messengers. They were connected to each other through the nirvanic power, and their souls were completely entangled, becoming a symbiotic body. This was the truth of Nirvanic witches. There was only one spell, and that was to make everyone else a part of the Nirvanic witches. Ordinary people or ordinary spiritualists could do the same, but because they didn't have magic power, or had different magic attributes, they couldn't have the same power as Lilith and the symbiotic bodies. This was a great fortune and misfortune. After all, if everyone could become a part of Lilith and have the same power as Lilith, the world would have been overturned by Lilith long ago. The awakening of the Nirvanic witches was very rare. Since ancient times, apart from little Jerlin, there had only been 9 people who had awakened. 2 of them were successful, so they didn't need to accept Lilith's conditions. Of course, it could also be because the 2 Nirvanic witches had awakened on the first night, so their talent wasn't as good as the Nirvanic witches who had awakened on the second night. Little Jerlin was the only Nirvanic witch who had awakened on the 3rd night. At the same time, because of little Jerlin's extraordinary talent, Lilith had become Jerlin's calamity on the night of her awakening. Chunzhao also knew Lilith's secret of being almost immortal. She had once signed a contract with the Demon Lord. The content of the contract was to send the demon army to the modern world, and the condition was to split the Demon Lord's lifespan and hers equally. In other words, Demon Lord Lilith's own lifespan would be split equally between the 2. This was the secret of her immortality. A Demon Lord's lifespan was measured in units of tens of thousands. However, Lilith was a very ambitious person. She wasn't satisfied with the current situation. She even found a new world and gained complete control over it. In the past 2,000 years, she had been experimenting in that new world and created the Nirvanic army. They were the countless monsters that Chunzhao had fought before. Chapter 23-21. The 3 Lilith glanced at each other. They could feel it too. If they continued fighting like this, Chunzhao would kill them one by one sooner or later. If one of them died, the power would return to the other sisters. Maybe it wouldn't be so difficult for them. Even if only one sister was left in the end, she would be the strongest. But Chunzhao didn't give them this chance at all. Let's go! Holy Light Lilith shouted. The other 2 Lilith rose into the air too. But Chunzhao wouldn't give them the chance to escape. He immediately turned into a stream of light and chased after the 3 Lilith. The first one Chunzhao caught up to was the first Lilith. Her wings made of countless palms didn't give her extreme speed. Instead, they became her burden. Seeing that Chunzhao had caught up to her, Lilith stopped running. She turned around and opened her huge wings. Countless spells shot toward Chunzhao. Chunzhao still had the momentum of wind and lightning in the overwhelming magic attacks. He charged before Lilith, not caring about the spells falling on him at all. Because of the distance, most of the spells couldn't focus on Chunzhao at all. Without hesitation, Chunzhao poured the dark lava into Lilith's mouth, nose and ears. Corroded by the dark lava, Lilith fell from the sky. Ignoring Lilith, Chunzhao chased up into the sky again. Only the original Holy Light Lilith and Elemental Lilith were left. Chunzhao's speed was much faster than the 2 Lilith. Just then, Elemental Lilith stopped too. She looked at Holy Light Lilith not far away. Elemental Lilith opened her arms. Instantly, the entire sky above Wasteland Market turned crimson. In an instant, streaks of meteors fell from the sky. Chunzhao raised an eyebrow. Was she going to plow the already ruined Wasteland Market again? Meteor fall. This was the extreme of elemental fire magic. The terrifying elements turned into meteors that fell from the sky. Chunzhao looked at Elemental Lilith, and then at Li Pan and Jerlin below. If he continued chasing, they might be in danger. Although he didn't want to, he still gave up on killing the remaining 2 Liliths in the end. If he didn't have any worries, he would definitely kill them all. If he let Lilith escape this time, an enemy of her level would definitely think of ways to increase his strength and target him at the same time. At their level, it might not be easy for them to break through their current realm, but if it was targeted, it wouldn't be too difficult. If they met again, Chunzhao might not be so relaxed. Of course, these worries were for the future. Chunzhao was most concerned about Jerlin. He landed on the ground and helped little Jerlin and Lapon block the apocalyptic magic. Starfall's goal was to cover as much area as possible. It didn't pose much of a threat to a single target. At least for people of their level, It was the same feeling as enjoying the waves on the beach on a sunny day. But to a minor spiritualist like Li Pan, this was no different from an apocalyptic disaster. Chen Zhao looked back at the sky. Elemental Lilith and Holy Light Lilith had already rushed into the blood eye. Then the bloody eye slowly closed. In the end it completely disappeared. But the wasteland market was completely covered in flames. Just then, little Jerlin's eyelids twitched, and she slowly opened her eyes. Papa. Jerlin looked at Chen Zhao in confusion. Papa, where is this? Wow, there's so much fire. Jerlin was born bold. She wasn't afraid at all. Seeing the flames around her, her first reaction wasn't fear. Instead, it was surprise. Jerlin wasn't afraid, but Lapon was scared half to death. The man in front of him was simply a monster in human skin. Papa, who is she? Are you looking for a mistress? Chen Zhao slapped Jerlin's head angrily. Stop talking nonsense. Then, Chen Zhao left the wasteland market with little Jerlin and Lapon. The air outside was still more comfortable. Even Chen Zhao didn't like breathing the burning air in the wasteland market. When the car drove into the center of Istanbul, Chen Zhao stopped and said to Lapon, Okay, you can go now. Lapon didn't say anything. She opened the car door and got out obediently. Wait. Chen Zhao stopped Li Pan. Lapon almost peed her pants. She looked at Chen Zhao with a sad face. I won't tell anyone what I saw today. Here's yours. Chen Zhao handed Lapon a check. Lapon almost thought that Chen Zhao was going to kill her. Lapon put the check away. Before she could thank him, Chen Zhao had already left with little Jerlin. When Chen Zhao returned to the hotel room and was about to tell Fei Lai that he was safe, he realized that there were people in the room. He opened the door and saw Baifla, Zhang Tianyi, and 23rd Blood Mary in the room. Why are you here? Chen Zhao asked in surprise. Huh? Is it over? You won? Zhang Tianyi asked. Of course. How's Lilith? How strong is she? Very strong. Unbelievably strong, Chen Zhao said. Tell us in detail. For cultivators at their level, it was very important to improve themselves through experience and communication. If they needed each other's help, they could even share the secret manuals and techniques of their respective sections. Chen Zhao started to slowly explain his battle with Lilith. Of course, he left out some details. However, Chen Zhao explained Lilith's situation in great detail. For example, he predicted Lilith's strength level. Everyone's brows were sometimes furrowed and sometimes relaxed. Sometimes they were deep in thought, and sometimes they nodded. In the end, Zhang Tianyi concluded, Lilith alone should be about as strong as Baifla. No, I'm stronger than any of them, Baifla said coolly. I'm confident that I can take on one. I can probably take on two, 23rd Blood Mary said. I can take on 7, but I can't do it as easily as Chen Zhao, Zhang Tianyi said. If it were me, I might have to fight them for 3 to 5 days. All of them had their own small worlds, so they had almost endless magic power. Thus, it was normal for them to fight for 3 to 5 days. Zhang Tianyi looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao has some unorthodox skills, but his battle techniques are still focused on his strength and speed. They're simple and singular, but it's precisely because of this that 7 Lilith are the hardest to deal with. Now that 2 Liliths have escaped, if they fight again, how do you think Lilith will try to defeat Chen Zhao? Chapter 23-22. Everyone sunk into deep thought. Just then, Zhang Tianyi said, There are 2 ways to defeat Chen Zhao. One is to defeat him with greater power, and the other is to defeat him by restraining him. As he spoke, Zhang Tianyi looked at the crowd again. Which of these 2 ideas do you think is more likely? The 23rd Blood Mary said, Theoretically speaking, my little world can actually suppress Chen Zhao, but it's not that simple. Even if there's a similar way to suppress Chen Zhao, it's still very difficult to do it. Your small world can't restrain him completely. Zhang Tianyi shook his head. To restrain Chen Zhao, you need to make him lose his ability to move, not just restrain him. Everyone was discussing how to restrain him, but Chen Zhao didn't take it to heart. This was a normal conversation. No one had any bad intentions. What about power that surpasses Chen Zhao? Baifla looked at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao shook his head. It's probably more difficult than making me lose my ability to move. At least, I've met some spiritualists who can make me temporarily lose my ability to move. But it's probably very difficult to surpass my current power. Unless it's something several levels higher than me. Didn't Chen Zhao say that he controlled one of Lilith's bodies, and learned from her soul fragments that Lilith controlled a small world, and conducted crazy experiments in that small world? We don't know anything about that small world. So it's hard to be sure that there aren't any powerful creatures in that world. For example, dragons. Perhaps ordinary dragons can't threaten Chen Zhao. And even dragons at the level of dragon fathers can't compete with Chen Zhao. But what about dragons at the level of dragon kings? If Lilith modifies them again, will they have a chance to surpass Chen Zhao? There's indeed such a possibility, but you've overlooked one point. Even if a dragon of such a level really exists in that small world, does Lilith really have the ability to defeat, or even kill a dragon of the Dragon King level? Of course, the possibility was one thing. Theoretically, it was indeed possible. They weren't discussing how to surpass Chen Zhao now. Instead, they were discussing the various possibilities. It wasn't really possible. It was like a group of rich people discussing how to defeat a certain rich person. There were actually many possibilities to defeat a certain rich person. But in reality, it was much more complicated. Moreover, this kind of discussion would allow Chen Zhao to realize more possibilities. This made him even more cautious. Therefore, this kind of discussion is not a bad thing. Everyone suggested various possibilities. Just then, Chen Zhao felt a familiar feeling. Old Zhang, I have something to do, Chen Zhao said, standing up. Help me take care of my daughter. I need to go out for a while. Everyone looked at Chen Zhao in surprise. Chen Zhao looked very anxious. No one knew what could make Chen Zhao so anxious. Even his daughter was left to be taken care of by everyone. All right. No one intended to pursue the matter. Since Chen Zhao wasn't going to say it, it was probably his privacy. Chen Zhao left the hotel in a hurry. The next moment he disappeared on the spot. Summon. The call from hell. But this time, Chen Zhao wasn't summoned away like before. Chen Zhao visited hell again. It was the familiar obsidian castle. However, Beelzebub Zophie was not there to welcome him. Chen Zhao had been to Obsidian Castle many times, so he knew the place quite well. He strolled around the Obsidian Castle. Just then, Chen Zhao felt a familiar and powerful aura. The owner of the aura also sensed Chen Zhao. A while later, Beelzebub Zophie appeared before Chen Zhao with his army. Human? How come it's you? Chen Zhao looked at Beelzebub Zophie and the army behind him. He almost thought that Zophie was going to fight him. Why not me? Did you summon me? Or was it not you who summoned me? I thought the summon failed, Beelzebub Zophie said. Or rather, you've reached a level where even I can't summon you anymore. Beelzebub Zophie said. Chen Zhao was stunned. He immediately realized this possibility. In the past, both the handsome guy and Beelzebub Zophie had summoned him. He didn't even have time to react before being summoned to hell. However, the summoning this time seemed a little different. He wasn't summoned to hell immediately. Moreover, he'd come to hell on his own accord. Unknowingly, he was already as powerful as Beelzebub Zophie. When Beelzebub Zophie summoned Chen Zhao didn't appear immediately. That was why Zophie thought that the summon had failed. Fortunately, Beelzebub Zophie sensed Chen Zhao's aura and rushed over. It seems that we're on the same level now, Chen Zhao said, nodding. Unbelievable. Human lifespans aren't worth mentioning in my eyes, but you humans grow so fast that it's terrifying. Chen Zhao chuckled. He couldn't treat it as normal. What surprised Beelzebub Zophie the most was his investment. They were allies. At first, he'd only treated Chen Zhao as his son's protector. Beelzebub Zophie and Oris had treated Chen Zhao as their son's protector not because he was powerful. It was because he could enter hell and the human world freely. This was something that no creature in the two worlds could do. That was why Beelzebub Zophie had invested quite a lot in Chen Zhao. Of course, he'd invested more in Chen Zhao's relationship. He didn't expect that Chen Zhao was already on the same level as him. Oh, why did you summon me? I'm about to fight another lord. How's the preparation for the weapon I asked you to make for me? Oh, I've prepared it a long time ago. Chen Zhao slapped his head and took out a huge hammer. The hammer was 20 meters in diameter, and there was a chain hanging from it. This was the weapon he'd prepared for Beelzebub Sophie. It was made by Ruan Faxben. Of course, the blueprint and most of the materials were provided by Beelzebub Sophie. The weapon was too huge for a regular person, but it was too small for Beelzebub Sophie's body. Beelzebub Sophie's body was about the size of Obsidian Castle. In Beelzebub Sophie's eyes, the hammer was like a glass orb. However, Beelzebub Sophie stared at the hammer before him in a daze. I can feel the power contained in it. The weapon's seal is also made according to the magic veins you provided. You know how to operate it without me saying much. Chapter 23:23. Beelzebub Sophie lifted the hammer and tried to use the seal. The hammer started shrinking, but not by too much. It was originally 20 meters in diameter, but after using the curse, it shrunk to 10 meters in diameter. Others couldn't use this weapon, especially demons. This was especially true for demons, because there were many angelic crystals hidden in the chain balls. All of them were perfect crystals too. Even a great lord-ranked demon would be injured by this attack. This was also Beelzebub Sophie's ultimate weapon. Demons couldn't make this weapon. That was why Beelzebub Sophie had asked Chen Zhao to make it for him. Beelzebub Sophie was very satisfied with this weapon. This weapon doesn't have a name yet. It's been around since the beginning, Beelzebub Sophie said. It's called Kingslayer. Chen Zhao was surprised. Although the weapon was embedded with large amounts of angelic crystals, it didn't have enough energy. Although this weapon was embedded with many angelic crystals, it was still made by Ruan Faisai. With Chen Zhao's current knowledge, he could even destroy this weapon. Even if angelic crystals countered demons, could it really kill a demon king? It's not complete, Beelzebub Sophie said. Chen Zhao was stunned for a moment, but he quickly realized what Beelzebub Sophie meant. Alchemists in the human world probably couldn't make a weapon that could kill a demon king. Even if they had all the materials and blueprints, it was still impossible. It was like a group of ants. If you gave them the blueprints for a cannon, could they really make a cannon? It was clearly impossible. Beelzebub Sophie's eyes lit up. When do you plan to fight the enemy lord? Chen Zhao asked. Beelzebub Sophie licked his lips. How about now? If you help me, I'll give you half of the spoils. Me? Chen Zhao fell into deep thought. His bellicose nature seemed to be responding to him. Beelzebub Sophie didn't rush Chen Zhao. Instead, he waited quietly for Chen Zhao's reply. That demon king won't attack you when he sees you attacking his subordinates, right? Chen Zhao asked. Do you think I'll fight a demon king recklessly? Beelzebub Sophie said confidently. It's very dangerous to steal a demon king's throne, but I'm not completely unprepared. Do you have any way to restrain the demon king? Of course I can't stop a demon king. Only a demon king can, Beelzebub Sophie said. Don't tell me you can make use of the other demon kings. Using the word use was a very dangerous thing to do with the demon king. Chen Zhao felt that it would be even more dangerous if Beelzebub Sophie did that. No. I'm not using the second demon king to restrain him. I'm relying on His Majesty's protection. Your Majesty? King of Gluttony? Yes. Is your bloodline close to the King of Gluttony? His Majesty and I are within 10 generations of each other, so we can be considered close relatives. However, my protection isn't because of my bloodline. It's because my father was once favored by His Majesty. My father made contributions for His Majesty. So His Majesty promised that as long as he and his children don't attack demons above their level, they won't attack us. My father didn't understand at the time, but now it seems that His Majesty has seen the future. All of Chen Zhao's knowledge of the King of Gluttony came from Belial. Only a demon king of the same level could casually comment on another demon king. Belial thought of Beelzebub as a gourmet who would do anything for food. Chen Zhao had reservations about this. However, Beelzebub was a demon king who took promises very seriously. He created a race for food. After that, he didn't burn the bridge after crossing it. Instead, he fulfilled his promise. To Chen Zhao, this was unbelievable. According to human thinking, burning the bridge after crossing it was what demons should do. That's why you dare to attack that demon king's subordinates? Yes. If that demon king dares to attack me, His Majesty definitely won't just stand by. I'm willing to help you. But you said you'd give me half of the spoils. Demon wealth doesn't seem to be of much use to me. Every lord's wealth is immeasurable. Are you sure it's useless to you? Chen Zhao touched his nose. Of course, he didn't think so. He was considering the gains and losses, as well as the risks involved. Just then Beelzebub Zophie said, I only want all the territory and people. You can take anything else that you can. Chen Zhao suddenly looked at Chen Zhao. This was almost the entire wealth of a great lord. Are you serious? Of course. Are we leaving now? Wait. Wait for what? Iris, Beelzebub Zophie said. Just then, the sky above Obsidian Castle was suddenly covered by darkness. Chen Zhao raised his head and saw Iris' terrifying body. As the child of Iris and Beelzebub Zophie, Abitos was less than 1/10,000th of Iris' size. When Iris spread her wings, she was even larger than Obsidian Castle. At the same time, almost all the demons in Obsidian Castle were intimidated by her peerless dragon might. What level is Iris? She's the same as me and similar to you. We're both lords. Of course, because dragons and demons don't have the same origin. Dragons have their own titles. She's a dragon king now. Come up, human. I'll allow you to stand on my back, Iris said. Beelzebub Zophie and Chen Zhao both flew onto Iris's back. Iris flapped her wings and flew into the distance with fiery clouds covering the sky. Iris flew very fast. At least, it was much faster than any plane Chen Zhao knew. But they still flew for 2 hours. Chen Zhao finally saw buildings on the ground. However, Iris spat out a mouthful of dragon breath from high up in the sky. In an instant, the buildings were erased. Was this a war between demons? Chen Zhao couldn't help but exclaim. The demons in the demon town below didn't even have time to react before they were completely wiped out. In the eyes of high-level demons, they were just ants. But this was the rule of demons. For humans, this was too cruel. But for demons, this was the norm. Chen Zhao wouldn't tell them that this was too cruel. Saying that at a time like this would only make him seem stupid. But he could only attack like this once. An even larger building complex appeared before them. That should be the main city. Iris and Beelzebub Zophie didn't plan to kill everyone here. They knew that population could bring them huge benefits. Chapter 23-24. However, when Iris's huge body appeared in the sky above the city, it still brought fear. The sky-covering wings whistled, filling the air with dust and heat waves as they surged into the city. At this moment, the city walls seemed meaningless. At this moment, 3 huge heads extended out from the main city below. They were 3 huge and strange dragon heads. The 3 dragon heads charged towards Iris, who was in the sky, without any explanation. Iris spat out a fiery red dragon's breath. The middle dragon head below also spat out a black dragon's breath. The 2 dragon breaths were equally matched and exploded in the sky. Chen Zhao looked at the 3 strange dragons. The 3 dragon heads actually had 3 auras, and they were all terrifying existences at the level of a great lord. Chen Zhao thought back to the 3-headed dragon he'd killed in the past. Compared to this 3-headed dragon, it was like a big shark and a small loach. Just then, Beelzebub Zophie dove down. As he fell, his body kept growing bigger and bigger. Bigger and bigger. When he landed on the ground, the entire main city trembled. Beelzebub Zophie also revealed his true form. Every step he took would cause the earth to shake, and the mountains to shake. Chen Zhao was still on Iris's back. Suddenly, Chen Zhao felt something in the dark clouds in the sky. Just then, the dark clouds suddenly split apart. Immediately, an incomparably huge red bird spread its wings and slashed down with its sharp claws, clawing at Iris's back. Chen Zhao suddenly soared into the sky. He instantly turned into a beam of light and shot toward the red bird. The red bird was also extremely fast. The moment it sensed the threat, it immediately turned in the opposite direction. Hiss! Chen Zhao didn't get the expected effect, but he still tore off a large piece of flesh from the red bird's neck. The red bird also had the aura of a great lord. Its body radiated a terrifying and scorching aura. Where are you from? Why don't I know you at all? The red bird stared at Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao's aura was too strange. The red bird couldn't tell what Chen Zhao was. In addition, although Chen Zhao's energy form was humanoid, it was clearly not the human that the giant red bird remembered. The red bird was many times smaller than Chen Zhao, but it clearly didn't underestimate Chen Zhao. After all, being able to injure him with a single strike was not something he could underestimate. Chen Zhao wouldn't underestimate the giant red bird either. He used all his power. In the infernal realm, there were far too many existences stronger than him. After a brief stalemate, a conflict broke out without warning. Both sides had a tacit understanding and instantly launched their attacks. The huge red bird turned into a beam of red light and shot toward Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao also turned into a beam of white light and charged at the giant red bird. Bang! Even higher up in the battlefield below, a similarly destructive energy shockwave erupted. Chen Zhao was thrown more than 10 kilometers away and crashed into a mountain. Half of the mountain wall crumbled from the impact. The giant red bird was also knocked down from the sky. The place where he fell set off a monstrous wave of fire. Chen Zhao stood up again. Strength and speed. They were almost equally matched. Moreover, they could all be energized. At the spot where the giant red bird landed, the flames that had been set off began to shrink. The flames turned into a giant red egg, which gave birth to the giant red bird again. It was an unharmed giant red bird. Chen Zhao frowned. Was this guy an immortal bird? Chen Zhao had once killed an immortal bird when he was half a step away from the Shangqing state. He knew very well how tenacious an immortal bird's life force was. Therefore, even with his immense life force, he might not be able to defeat an immortal bird. Moreover, even though he had immense life force, it didn't mean that he was truly immortal. The giant red bird was unharmed. It spread its wings again and screeched at Chen Zhao. At the moment, Beelzebub, Sophie and Iris were fighting against the three-headed dragon together. Damn, the three-headed demon was prepared. He actually invited Red Eagle. I hope that human can hold on. Iris couldn't escape either. The three-headed demon's power was beyond their imagination. The two of them fought against the three-headed demon together, but they actually couldn't gain the upper hand. Red Eagle was also terrifyingly powerful. Beelzebub, Sophie and Iris were both secretly glad. Luckily, they'd invited Chen Zhao this time. If Chen Zhao hadn't stalled Red Eagle, they would have been in danger if Red Eagle joined the battle while they were focused on fighting the three-headed demon. The three-headed demon's power was simply too terrifying. It was fighting Beelzebub, Sophie and Iris alone, and still had the upper hand. It was evident how terrifying it was. The two battlefields weren't very far apart. At least for existences at their level, it was only a step away. However, the two battlefields avoided each other tacitly. The three-headed demon and Red Eagle thought that they had the upper hand. If they rashly regrouped their opponents, there might be changes. Beelzebub, Sophie, Iris, and Chen Zhao all thought that they should help each other after they finished off their enemies. The two battlefields were fighting fiercely. They couldn't decide the winner yet. They hadn't even hurt each other yet, but they were wildly destroying everything around them. Low-level demons didn't even have the right to join the battle. They didn't even have the right to watch. After a few fierce battles, Chen Zhao was already covered in injuries. His immense life force gave him powerful recovery abilities. However, even that couldn't keep up with the speed at which he was injured. Red Eagle, on the other hand, could be reborn again and again. No matter how serious his injuries were, he could recover after rebirth. Moreover, his recovery speed was too fast. Chen Zhao couldn't even stop him before Red Eagle finished rebirth. Looks like you're about to lose, Red Eagle said arrogantly and proudly. Defeating a powerful great lord was something even he could be proud of. Chen Zhao, on the other hand, was unprecedentedly calm. He stared at Red Eagle sternly and coldly. You haven't won yet. It's only a matter of time. Red Eagle glanced in the direction of his ally, the three-headed demon. Similarly, the three-headed demon single-handedly suppressed the two great lords. It seemed that he didn't need Chen Zhao's help anymore. You'll be my third great lord's food. I'm sure your flesh will be especially delicious. Magma dripped from Red Eagle's beak. He seemed to be imagining the taste of swallowing Chen Zhao into his stomach. Chen Zhao gulped. He suddenly thought of the terrifyingly powerful great lord before him. He definitely wouldn't taste bad. Chapter 23-25. It was Chen Zhao's first time. It was his first time wanting to eat Red Eagle so strongly. It was rare that both sides had the same thought. It seemed that Red Eagle had the absolute upper hand. The two were similar. They both specialized in strength and speed. In a situation where the strength and speed of both sides were similar, recovery ability became the key factor that determined the outcome of the battle. But Chen Zhao's recovery, which he'd always been proud of, was at a disadvantage in this battle. It was precisely this factor that almost defeated Chen Zhao. Red Eagle wasn't in a hurry to attack. He was accumulating power to give Chen Zhao one last attack. The flames on his body gradually retracted, causing his wings to become as red as colored glass. Chen Zhao was also recovering from his injuries. Red Eagle grinned and laughed proudly. "Don't waste your life force. Everything you have is mine. I'll squeeze out all of your exuberant life force." It was rare that Chen Zhao didn't respond to Red Eagle's mockery. He was also making his final preparations. Red Eagle launched his final attack. His unparalleled speed turned him into a bolt of red lightning. The sky was almost split in half by the red lightning. But this time, Chen Zhao didn't choose to fight it head-on. Just like that, he hovered in place, looking at the red lightning that was speeding towards him. He raised his arm and grabbed at the air. A black trident appeared in his hand. An aura filled with death spread out. Chen Zhao didn't notice that the second internal alchemy left by Old Turtle on the black trident had lit up. Chen Zhao just focused all his power on his right arm. Then he threw the black trident at the red lightning. Chen Zhao threw the black trident with all his strength. It also turned into a bolt of black lightning, leaving a black path in the sky. For Red Eagle, the black trident was about the size of a needle. However, this needle carried with it an endless sense of death. It was a terror that could destroy all life. The black lightning pierced through the red lightning. The red lightning flew forward for another dozen kilometers. Then it suddenly turned downward and landed diagonally on the ground. High in the sky, Chen Zhao waved his hand. The black lightning drew an arc in the air and returned to his hand. This time, Red Eagle didn't rise from the ashes. His chest was directly pierced through, and the place that was pierced through did not heal. Instead, there was a patch of black, and the black continued to expand and spread. Red Hawk wanted to stand up again several times, but he couldn't steady himself. Chen Zhao suddenly descended from the sky and stepped heavily on the Red Eagle's head. He pressed the back onto the ground. "What is that thing?" Honging roared. He wanted to know what exactly had defeated him. "It's for fishing," Chen Zhao answered calmly. "I can become your most humble servant." "No, I don't need servants. I need food." Chen Zhao was still calm. "So please die." With that, he raised the black trident. Struggled intensely, he wanted to escape, wanted to resist. But the destructive power was currently corroding Red Eagle at a terrifying speed. Red Hawk's recovery ability, in front of this life-destroying power, seemed so insignificant and powerless. Even if Chen Zhao didn't do anything, Red Eagle wouldn't be able to get rid of that terrifying power. His death was inevitable, but Chen Zhao wanted to speed up the process. So, Chen Zhao's black trident pierced straight into Red Eagle's head. Red Eagle's wings and claws still shook violently a few times. Then, he lost all signs of life. Just then, the black on Red Eagle's corpse quickly retreated. It seeped out of his wound, and then flowed back into the black trident. Huh. Chen Zhao was surprised. He'd used the black trident to kill enemies before, but it didn't have this effect. Chen Zhao couldn't help but pick up the black trident and study it. Looking closely, he realized that the second internal core on the black trident was actually shining with a reserved light. He hadn't noticed it at all when he'd used it just now. Back then, Old Turtle had put in 12 internal cores. Chen Zhao could only activate one whenever his strength increased by a level. This was also Chen Zhao's ultimate weapon. It was specially used to deal with enemies that couldn't be killed. But no matter how powerful the black trident was, it was still a dead object. For example, the that they had faced this time, his strength was undeniable. If Chen Zhao had taken out the black trident from the start, he might not have been able to win. Instead, Red Eagle would be more cautious and fight Chen Zhao more carefully. Only when Red Eagle was the most arrogant and relaxed. When he thought victory was in his grasp. Attacking when Red Eagle couldn't dodge was the best opportunity. Reality proved that Chen Zhao's decision was correct. Using the black trident at any time was better than using it as a last resort. Chen Zhao put away Red Eagle's corpse and turned to look at the other battlefield. Seeing that its ally had died, the three-headed demon's expression changed drastically. He knew very well how terrifying this ally of his was. Even it wasn't confident that it could defeat Red Eagle. In fact, it even thought that Red Eagle was immortal. But now, the immortal Red Eagle had been killed by an unknown enemy. This made him turn pale with fright. Run! He had to run. The three-headed demon turned to run. But at that moment, Iris suddenly pounced on the three-headed demon. The demon immediately wrapped itself around Iris, as if it wanted to strangle her to death. Then Beelzebub Zophie also pounced. Just then, Beelzebub Zophie suddenly took out the Kingslayer. Under Beelzebub Zophie's spell, the Kingslayer suddenly grew 1,000 times larger. Beelzebub Zophie swung the Kingslayer. The Kingslayer smashed onto one of the demon's heads. In an instant, the dragon head was smashed into pieces. The color of the Kingslayer's metal surface actually changed. The Kingslayer turned black. Ah, what's that? The remaining 2 heads of the three-headed demon screamed in terror. The Kingslayer was swung horizontally by Beelzebub Zophie again. Whoosh! Instantly blood and flesh flew everywhere. The second head was smashed into pieces. Just like Chen Zhao, Beelzebub Zophie was also waiting for an opportunity. He was waiting for the opportunity to deal the fatal blow to the three-headed demon. Chen Zhao killing Red Eagle made the demon lose its sense of propriety. At the same time, it created an opportunity for Beelzebub Zophie. At this time, Iris also broke free from the three-headed demon that had lost 2 heads. Due to the death of the other 2 heads, the three-headed demon's last head was unprecedentedly weak. On the other hand, Beelzebub Zophie's Kingslayer was perfected after absorbing the flesh of 2 great lords. This was the final process of the Kingslayer. It was evolving toward perfection, Divine Emperor of the 9 Heavens. Chapter 23-26. Iris finally had a chance to counterattack. Being suppressed by the three-headed demon earlier had made her feel very uncomfortable. Now that there was only 1 head left, Iris had nothing to worry about anymore. A huge dragon claw grabbed the last head and gave it a fatal dragon breath. Of course, the dragon breath had only injured the three-headed demon. Even though it only had 1 head left, it still had a tenacious life force. Beelzebub Zophie ignored the last dragon head and did not use Kingslayer again. Instead, he grabbed the 2 corpses on the ground and stuffed them into his mouth. He was a great lord of gluttony. He could devour everything, including his enemies. The three-headed demon's terrifying power clashed with Beelzebub Zophie's power in his body. However, the three-headed demon's power was without a master after all. How could it defeat Beelzebub Zophie? As Beelzebub Zophie devoured the three-headed demon, he dissolved its power at the same time. His flesh and essence were all becoming a part of Beelzebub Zophie. This kind of devouring temporarily made Beelzebub Zophie weak. Although he had a very pure gluttony bloodline, he could not immediately turn the enemy he devoured into a part of himself. It needed to be digested and refined. On the battlefield, it was rare to have a chance to devour someone else's flesh and essence. Only now would the situation be set in stone. Even if there were still enemies, it would not matter. Only then would Beelzebub Zophie dare to devour his enemies without worry. Iris was also gnawing on the three-headed demon's last dying head. However, she did not have the gluttony bloodline. She was purely venting her anger. Chen Zhao also watched from the side, watching how Iris tortured her dying opponent. Iris, move. I'll do it. Beelzebub Zophie had recovered some power. He mentioned the Kingslayer again, and looked at the three-headed demon's last head on the ground. Three-headed demon, you look like you've been prepared for a long time. Who told you? Zophie, do you still need someone else to inform you? Your actions have long since attracted the king's attention. My territory is adjacent to yours, so you will naturally attack me first. Moreover, we have already formed an alliance, so my death will not bring you anything. It will only cause you to follow in my footsteps. Now, all the lords under the king will directly attack you. Just you wait, just you wait. Haha. The three-headed devil did not beg for mercy. He knew that begging for mercy was useless. Their identities and positions had already determined their fates. Either you die or I die. Of course, Beelzebub Zophi would not show mercy, just because of the three-headed demon's threat. It directly devoured the last head of the three-headed devil. Due to the clash of powers, Beelzebub Zophi became even weaker. Beelzebub Zophi transformed into his human form, while Iris remained in her original form. She circled around Beelzebub Zophi. Only then did Chen Zhao land beside Beelzebub Zophi. You look like you're in bad shape. I just devoured the three-headed demon. Our powers are violently clashing in my body. I can't digest his power in a short time. This is for you. Chen Zhao tossed a few demonic crystals to Beelzebub Zophi. In contrast to angelic crystals, demonic crystals were great supplements for demons. Of course, for a demon lord like Beelzebub Zophi, regular demonic crystals were useless. However, Chen Zhao had given him perfect demonic crystals. They were rare treasures even for lords. Beelzebub Zophi did not argue with Chen Zhao. He grabbed the demonic crystals and stuffed them into his mouth. How is it? A little better, Beelzebub Zophi said. I heard the three-headed demon's last words. All the lords under the Demon King will attack you. This shouldn't be within the King of Gluttony's protection rules, right? I know, Beelzebub Zophi said. Seems like my plan has triggered the Demon King's nerves. How many lords does that Demon King have? A few dozen. What do we do now? Chen Zhao asked worriedly. No matter how strong Beelzebub Zophi was, he could not defend against a few dozen lords attacking him at the same time. Moreover, Beelzebub Zophi did not have absolute power. Even with Iris's strength, Iris was only as strong as an ordinary great lord. They can't all come out at the same time. After all, they all have their own enemies, and they have to guard against each other. The Demon King can't order them to attack me directly, because that's the same as attacking me. Then Her Majesty can intervene. So it's a close shave. No, even if it's only a third or a quarter of the lords, or even 5 of them attacking me, Iris and I will still be in danger. If you need help next time, just summon me, Chen Zhao said seriously. After coming to hell so many times, Chen Zhao no longer felt lost or afraid of it. He was not very familiar with it, but he was at least half familiar with it. In hell, only demons above the Demon King level could kill him. Although they were both great lord-ranked demons, it would not be easy for them to kill him. Also, if he could not defeat them, he could still run. His speed was top-notch even in the infernal realm. Therefore, there was no reason that he could not run. At most, he could just run to the places of the bosses he knew. In the face of life and death, he did not care about his reputation. It was not convenient for them to intervene, and he did not ask them to. If he ran to their homes, the pursuers would not dare to barge in. I won't fall that easily, Beelzebub Zophi said stubbornly. Yes, it's indeed not easy to find 5 lords, Chen Zhao said mockingly. By the way, do you really not have a solution? Not yet. Beelzebub Zophi shook his head with a gloomy expression. If I can't handle it, I'll just run away, and then deal with them one by one. Can't I? I'm different from you, Beelzebub Zophi said. Do you know why I'm a great lord? Why? Because my territory is my foundation, and the source of my power. The bigger my territory, the more power I can contain. This is also why the three-headed demon did not choose to run when he knew I would attack him, Beelzebub Zophi said. Beelzebub Zophi said, in the entire hell, countless lords fight each other, because the size of their territory determines the upper limit of a lord's power. Now that you've taken over the three-headed demon's territory, does that mean you're much more powerful than before? I'm talking about my upper limit, not my current power, Beelzebub Zophi said. Then if you defeat all the great lords under the Demon King, will the Demon King become weak too? Chapter 23-27. Beelzebub Zophi shook his head. The Demon King's power doesn't come from the size of his territory. It comes from the rules. As long as he controls the rules, I can't defeat him. Can't defeat him? Then what are you doing? Trying to kill yourself? The so-called impossible is relative. He controls the rules, but he is also restricted by the rules. My plan is nothing more than dancing on a tightrope. The risk is great. But if I can replace the Demon King, then the benefits will naturally be great. Although Beelzebub Zophi was being roasted on a stove, he'd still conquered a territory. He couldn't lose out on the benefits. Chen Zhao wouldn't go easy on his share. Next, it was time to split the spoils. Chen Zhao watched as large amounts of resources were carried out. Most of these resources were unique to hell. They weren't worth much in the human world. Chen Zhao felt a bit depressed. He wasn't an alchemist. He could only sell these things to alchemists in the human world. Most alchemists in the human world couldn't even use them. What else could he do? Even if Chen Zhao gave all the resources to Ruan Faxaban, he wouldn't be able to use them. Let's not talk about making use of it. He should first identify all the materials. Some things were worth a lot of money in the human world, but to Chen Zhao, it was just a drop in the ocean. For Chen Zhao's current wealth, there was no qualitative increase. This made Chen Zhao feel even more depressed. What heel of the dead? What heart of black iron? He had never heard of these things. As for what they were used for, it was even more unclear. Just then, Beelzebub Zophi and Iris walked up to Chen Zhao. What? You're crying after getting such a large amount of wealth. You should be happier. Look at me, I'm dying. I'm not as sad as you. The thing is, I can't exchange these things for wealth. Don't you feel depressed? How about this? I'll trade with you with something, Beelzebub Zophi said, smiling. What? Chen Zhao was instantly energized. If it was some priceless treasure, he was happy to exchange these resources. Him. Just then, Beelzebub Zophi pointed at a demon behind him. The demon had a normal body. He had sharp ears, completely black eyes, and a skinny body. His hands and feet were all shackled. Him? You want to trade him for all the resources of a great lord? No matter who he is, he's not worth that price. Chen Zhao shook his head. Business was business, and friendship was friendship. Even if he couldn't turn these resources into the wealth he needed. However, this did not mean that these resources were worthless. Beelzebub Zophi wanted to trade an unknown demon for such a huge amount of resources. What kind of joke was this? He's the chief alchemist under the three-headed devil, felt Nitak. Just him alone is more valuable than the 900 alchemists in my alchemy army. I was wondering if I should use him to trade for resources, but given my current situation, I can only choose to trade him with resources. After all, these resources can solve my urgent problems. Zophi nodded. Can he make a divine weapon for me? Chen Zhao asked in disdain. Ruan Faxi had always said that he wanted to forge a divine artifact and leave his name in the annals of history. However, even if a large amount of rare materials were placed in front of him, he would not be able to do so. Up until now, he still hadn't figured it out. Those precious materials had indeed been used to create some powerful alchemy tools. However, they were only powerful. They were still worlds apart from a divine weapon. Yes, I can. At this time, Felt Nitak spoke first. As long as the Honorable Sir can provide the materials needed for the divine artifact, this lowly one can create a divine artifact for you. Chen Zhao could not finish his sentence. After a while he said, even so, he's still not worth it. How about half the resources? He's more useful than you think. Half is still too much. Tell me what benefits he can bring me first. Forget about the divine weapon. A divine artifact was a divine artifact. How powerful it was up to the benevolent to see it. Could he drag the handsome guy down from the throne with the divine weapon? Could he make Beelzebub Zophi defeat all the great lords attacking him? No. This was clearly impossible. If this demon was really that capable, Beelzebub Zophi would not have sent him out. I remember that you collected 100 portions of the blood of the King of Power's subordinates, right? Yes, I did. Chen Zhao nodded. He'd even asked Beelzebub Zophi to collect it for him. Did you make the finished product? He can, Beelzebub Zophi said, pointing at Felt Nitak. Chen Zhao clearly remembered that he'd been able to break through to the Great Lord level because of the handsome guy and Belial's guidance. He'd also gained enlightenment from the blood of the King of Power's subordinates. At the time, he hadn't collected 100 portions of the King of Power's blood yet. Even so, he'd still successfully comprehended an unimaginable level of power from it. His increase in power was also guided by King Kong. As a pure subordinate of the King of Power, King Kong had the ability to see through the nature of all power. Of course, seeing through didn't mean that he could do it himself. Chen Zhao's power had long surpassed his, but he could still guide Chen Zhao in this aspect. Chen Zhao had followed his method and collected 100 portions of the King of Power's blood, but he still couldn't use it to increase Chen Zhao's power. Even knowing the method didn't mean that he could do it. For example, everyone knew that there were resources on the moon, but how could he obtain them? Go play with your balls. The 100 portions of blood Chen Zhao had were materials to build a spaceship. Then who would build this spaceship? The engineer was here. Beelzebub Zophie had sent him here. Collect half of the resources yourself, Chen Zhao said straightforwardly. He's mine now. This was the first time Chen Zhao had made such a domineering declaration to someone. And it was a male demon. Greetings, master. Felt Nitak knelt on one knee and swore loyalty to Chen Zhao. Good boy. Smiling, Chen Zhao looked at Felt. Zophie, help me unlock his shackles. Also, help me find a place to stay. Master, can I continue to use my old lab? Chen Zhao looked at Beelzebub Zophie. Beelzebub Zophie was also straightforward. I'll return all your old stuff, including your lab and everything inside. Chapter 23-28. When can I get the finished product? Chen Zhao asked. 1 month, I promise, Fertnitak replied. 1 month, right? I don't want to hear news that it needs to be delayed. Yes, I'll definitely give you the finished product within a month. I can't sort through this pile of resources. I can't even recognize everything. Help me organize them when you have time. Master, I'm afraid I can't organize them in a short time if I'm alone. Fertnitak looked helplessly at the mountain of supplies in front of him. There were at least hundreds of thousands of tons of resources. There were all sorts of things. There could be hundreds of thousands of types. Even if Felt could clone himself, he wouldn't be able to organize them in a short time. I'll ask Zophie for some people to be your subordinates. Master, I have 2 assistants. They're still with Mr. Zophie. They're great helpers. Sure, I'll ask for them for you, Chen Zhao said. For Chen Zhao and Beelzebub Zophie, this was a piece of cake. When Chen Zhao asked Beelzebub Zophie for people, Beelzebub Zophie gave them to Chen Zhao without hesitation. At the same time, he gave Chen Zhao a group of 5,000 underlings. Chen Zhao had some underlings in his house, and Blackie's alternate space had a large number of them too. Therefore, Chen Zhao had interacted with underlings many times. He had a good impression of them and was more at ease. They were very hardworking. After recognizing their master, they would be loyal to him. Underlings wouldn't betray their masters. Usually, every demon would raise a few underling groups. However, these underling groups wouldn't be directly loyal to their breeders. The breeders would usually replenish some underlings after a period of time. Only then would these chosen underlings be loyal to the breeders. Of course, some demons raised underlings for sale. They wouldn't let the underlings be loyal to them directly. Once their original master was defeated or killed, the underlings that had already been loyal to the demon would lose their right to exist. For example, the 3-headed demon had been defeated by Beelzebub Zophie. The underlings that had been loyal to the 3-headed demon had also been completely eliminated by Beelzebub Zophie. What Beelzebub Zophie could bring out were those who were domesticated, but had never been loyal to anyone. But now, the underlings that Chen Zhao had gotten from Beelzebub Zophie were loyal to him. At first, Chen Zhao wasn't used to inferior demons. But now, Chen Zhao was used to having underlings assist him in his daily life. He didn't plan on bringing these 5,000 underlings back to the human world. Instead, he left it behind and handed it over to Fertnitak to manage. After that, he left Beelzebub Zophie's territory. Because someone was summoning him. Belia. She sensed that she had arrived in hell. However, she did not summon Chen Zhao directly. Instead, she sent him a message. Chen Zhao crossed layers of mountains in hell, passing through vast plains and barren deserts. However, it was still far away from Belial's palace. Just then, Chen Zhao felt like his body was enveloped by some power. Instantly, Chen Zhao felt a terrifying pressure. Even his physical body felt like it was going to be crushed under this pressure. And this force was bringing him forward at an even faster speed. Even an ocean could be passed by in the blink of an eye. It was too fast, indescribably fast. Mountains, rivers, and oceans flashed past like lights. When Chen Zhao stopped, he saw countless stars dotting the ground. They were shining spheres embedded in the ground. Some were big and some were small. The big ones were several meters wide, while the small ones were only the size of a fist. In the center of the stars was a domed palace. Chen Zhao landed in front of the palace and strolled inside. It was his first time entering Belial's palace from the outside. In the past, he was always summoned into the palace directly. When he entered, the luminous pearls embedded in the pillars along the way lit up. Chen Zhao saw Belial lying lazily on the throne in the deep hall. "You're too slow. At least I made it here." Chen Zhao shrugged. If Chen Zhao had flown here with his own speed, he might not even reach in a few months. Only Belial's power could bring him here so quickly. "I'm very sad that you didn't come to find me immediately after coming to hell. If you really need me, you can summon me from the human world to hell." Two maids brought over some fruits from hell. Chen Zhao sat down and started eating. "You have a special smell." Belial sat up. Her body was huge. Wherever she sat, she was more than 10 meters tall. Belial leaned over and sniffed Chen Zhao's body. This was the first time Chen Zhao saw Belial stand up on her own. "I have a special smell? I just fought with the great lord and—" "I'm not talking about the little firebird's smell," Belial interrupted. "What's in your spatial ring?" Chen Zhao tossed the spatial ring to Belial and told her to find it herself. A while later, Belial took out a huge heart. Chen Zhao had collected this when he'd fought with the giant snake in the barren land. "You mean this is the special smell on me? This is the Titan snake's heart, but it's been modified. Is it very rare?" Chen Zhao asked curiously. "If it's a pure Titan snake instead of this twisted thing, it'll be even more valuable." "What's so valuable?" All Chen Zhao could think of was that it could either be used to make something or be eaten. Belial wasn't Beelzebub, the king of gluttony. She probably didn't have that much desire for food. So Chen Zhao guessed that this thing was probably used to make something. "It's not what you think." Even though Chen Zhao didn't say anything, Belial could still tell what he was thinking. "You can read minds. You know what I'm thinking?" "It's a guess," Belial said. "Just like how you can tell what an animal is doing." "Am I an animal in your eyes?" "No. In my eyes, animals can't communicate." "What's this thing for?" "Titan snakes are special creatures. If they evolve into world snakes, they'll create a small world." "Alternate dimension? I can open one myself." Belial shook her head. "No. No matter how big your alternate dimension is, it's just an alternate dimension. No matter how small a small world is, it's still a world. What's the difference between a small world and an alternate dimension?" "There's not much difference, but a small world can produce natural elements. An alternate dimension can only rely on the main world to have natural elements. It can't produce natural elements by itself." Chapter 23-29. It still doesn't mean anything to me. What was the difference between a small world that could produce spiritual qi and an alternate dimension? Essentially, there was no difference to Chen Zhao. "That's true for you," Belia said. "But it's different for me. What's the use? I can create a race and throw them into the small world to develop on their own. Then, I'll take back the small world. So that small world is like a ranch to you, right? You can understand it that way. But the difference is that I'm not taking back those races. I'm taking back the world itself." "How does that work?" Chen Zhao was even more curious. "It's very complicated and hard to explain," Belia said. "At least last time. You've proven that you can't understand this with your comprehension." Last time on the ice plains, Chen Zhao had received both Belia and the handsome guy's guidance. In the end, he'd barely broken through. At that time, Belia and the handsome guy had complained about Chen Zhao's comprehension, but Chen Zhao's curiosity only lasted for 3 minutes. Then it was time for Belia. Both of them were familiar with it. Until Chen Zhao's time in hell ended, Chen Zhao returned to the human world. Just then, Chen Zhao's phone suddenly received countless messages and missed calls. "Hey Belia, you've called me 168 times in the past 24 hours. What's so urgent?" "Chen Zhao, you're finally here. Where did you go yesterday?" "Something." Chen Zhao didn't explain. "Jerlin woke up yesterday and realized you weren't here. She's been crying. Are you and Jerlin at the hotel? I'll go right now. No, I brought Jerlin to watch the match. What match? Soccer match? Trial, it's the third trial. Papa, I want to talk to Papa. Just then Jerlin snatched Belia's phone. Papa, I miss you, she said pitifully. Papa, where are you? Jerlin, be good next to Uncle Belia. I'll go find you now. Oh, Uncle Belia, here's your phone. Where's the trial? Sense the entire Istanbul, and see where the spiritual chi is the most abundant. Chen Zhao furrowed his brows. He rose into the air and expanded his small world completely. As expected, Chen Zhao sensed a large amount of dense spiritual chi gathering in the southeast of Istanbul. Chen Zhao headed southeast. Chen Zhao came to the place with the densest spiritual chi, but found nothing there. There was only one mountain, as well as lush vegetation. Chen Zhao's small world expanded again. He still couldn't find anything. Just then Chen Zhao felt someone appear nearby. There were 10 of them in total, and all of them were spiritualists. Each of them had a large amount of magic power. Chen Zhao skipped over it and went up to the man. It was Matthew, Angie, and the others. Who are you? The person was very wary of Chen Zhao's sudden appearance. But when 5 of them saw Chen Zhao, they couldn't help but be stunned. Chen, it's you. Matthew exclaimed in surprise. Matthew, it's you guys. Chen Zhao greeted Matthew. Why are you here? We finished the third trial, so we came out directly. Chen, what are you doing here? I heard from my friend that the entrance to the third trial is here, but I couldn't find it after searching for a long time. I'll take you there, Matthew offered. Sure. Chen Zhao landed on the ground. Matthew turned to Angie. Angie, take them back to the hotel. I'll go with Chen. Okay. Angie looked at Chen Zhao and nodded slightly. That day, everyone had fainted. Only Angie and Matthew were conscious. She knew very well how intense the battle between Chen Zhao and the Red Demon had been. The destruction of Desolate Market was also related to Chen Zhao. Angie, who's that? He seems to be very familiar with you. Matthew rarely shows such enthusiasm. That guy? He's a monster, Angie said calmly. Monster? Of course, everyone understood what Angie meant by monster. He's strong? Yes. How strong? Even stronger than Matthew? With the 10 of us together, we should be able to last 5 seconds. Don't joke. How old is he? Angie isn't joking, Boanta said. The entrance to the third trial was in a cave in the mountains. Matthew took Chen Zhao through the cave and entered a strange space filled with birdsong and fragrant flowers. The place was covered in the scent of spring. The projected sun was also dazzling and warm. It didn't have the gray, deathly stillness of Desolate Market at all. There was a milky white palace before them. It had the style of an ancient Greek temple. Let's go. The Palace of 4 Seasons is in front of us. Matthew took Chen Zhao into the Palace of 4 Seasons. The Palace of 4 Seasons looked like a huge coliseum. There were many spiritualists in the audience. In the coliseum, there were dozens of spiritualists. They were facing 3 figures. The 3 figures looked very strange. Chen Zhao couldn't feel their breathing. However, they emitted powerful auras. Those 3 are. Those 3 are the puppet bodies controlled by Celestial Master Zhang, 23rd Blood Mary, and Mr. Wendy, Matthew said. Chen Zhao patted his head. He remembered that Bifla had mentioned this before. I thought it would be teams against the 3. Why are there so many teams against the 3 of them at the same time? There's nothing we can do about it. In the first few groups, they fought against the puppets of the 3 seniors. However, they were all killed in an instant. Even our group had to work together with the other groups to obtain victory. If it were just one group, almost no group would be able to pass the trial. Matthew's team was the top seed in this year's Battle of Holy Glory. Perhaps only the Celestial Master sect from Dragon Tiger Mountain could fight against them. Even Matthew said that it was almost impossible for a team to pass the trial. That meant that the trial this time was extremely difficult. Chen Zhao glanced at the battle in the center of the field. It indeed looked intense. However, Chen Zhao wasn't interested in this battle. He went to find Jerlin and Bifla. Soon Chen Zhao found them. Matthew, I found someone. If you're busy, you should go ahead and do it. Okay. If you need me, you can call me. There's signal here. Okay, got it. Jerlin had been sitting on Bifla's lap, watching the trial in the Colosseum. However, one of her eyes saw Chen Zhao. She suddenly turned in Chen Zhao's direction. Papa! Jerlin's short legs jumped to the ground. Chen Zhao hurried forward and caught Jerlin before she hit the ground. Papa, Papa, Papa! Jerlin was very excited. Chapter 23:30. Chen Zhao tossed Jerlin high into the air. Little Jerlin laughed heartily. She couldn't stop giggling. The little tantrum she'd had because she couldn't see Chen Zhao disappeared in the blink of an eye. After playing with Jerlin for a while, Chen Zhao sat beside Bifla. It's been hard on you these days. Other than when she cries, Bifla said calmly. Jerlin's usually very likable. Uncle Bifla, has Jerlin been naughty these days? Jerlin was in Chen Zhao's arms, but her short hand was holding Bifla's arm. She stared at Bifla with her big eyes. At Bifla's position, he basically wouldn't fall for anything but Jerlin's tricks. Jerlin's always been good, Bifla said, smiling. Where have you been these days? Not 2 days. More accurately, I've been gone for 24 hours. Okay, where have you been in the past 24 hours? Chen Zhao took out a bright red feather. Bifla took it. There was still a faint aura lingering on it, but this faint aura made people's hearts palpitate. It was like a fatal poison. No matter how small the amount, it was still frightening. What's this? Such a scary aura. Would you believe me if I said I went to maintain world peace? If you went to destroy this thing, I believe you, Bifla said seriously. When he heard Chen Zhao's words, he didn't think too much about it. He just thought that a terrifying monster had appeared somewhere, and Chen Zhao had gone to destroy it. Just from the aura emitted by the feather, if such a monster really appeared, it would definitely be a disaster. Anything else? Bifla asked. With your habits, if you destroy this monster, you'll probably collect its corpse, right? Do you want it? Yes. Bifla nodded. For what? There's a special power on it. The magic in my body is being attracted by it. I want to research what's so attractive about it. How much? As much as you have. Chen Zhao took out 2 red eagle feathers. Take them first. I'll pluck all the feathers from the corpse later. In return, if I get any results from my research, I will share them with you. At this moment, the battle below had already ended. Another batch of participants was swapped out, and the opponents were still 3 puppet bodies. Anti-Gaia! Anti-Gaia! Jerlin immediately cried out in excitement. One of the teams in the mall happened to be from the supernatural organization. Bifla glanced at Chen Zhao. Your team seems to be in trouble. What's wrong? Chen Zhao asked. My team isn't weak, and it looks like the other teams aren't bad either. Why is there trouble? Among those teams, there's a team whose members are all notorious soul catchers. What the hell? What is a soul catcher? Soul catcher was a spell of the soul. It was a spell that specialized in attacking the soul. So what? Will they attack their comrades? Chen Zhao asked. They won't take the initiative to attack their comrades, but they habitually treat all the living people around them as their weapons. As long as it's the soul of an enemy or a comrade standing in front of them, they will use it as a weapon to attack the enemy. Facing them are Celestial Master Zhang, Blood Mary, and Wendy. No matter which one of them is a soul they can't absorb, so they will definitely attack the souls of the people around them. Chen Zhao frowned, but then he understood. If my people fall here, it only means that they aren't skilled enough. I can't be blamed. Chen Zhao wasn't worried about their lives. Out of the 3 people in front of him, 2 of them were his friends. Even if Chen Zhao didn't do anything, the other 2 wouldn't just stand by and watch. Of course, it wasn't accurate to call them friends. They were more like friends. They discussed and communicated with each other. Soon the battle began. 5 teams of 50 people began to launch a fierce attack on the 3 puppet bodies. But the 3 puppets were easily dispelled. Zhang Tianyi, 23rd Blood Mary, and Wendy's magic power were suppressed to the same level as the opponents. But their realms were still there. Their magic knowledge wasn't something the opponents could compare to. They even had much more battle experience than the opponents. So it still wasn't a fair battle. For them, numbers were just barely enough to maintain an undefeatable situation. It was not a bargaining chip for them to achieve victory. Soon, The 50 people were cut off by the three. Chen Zhao shook his head. There was indeed a clear difference. Zhang Tianyi, Blood Mary, and Wendy, who controlled the puppet bodies, had precise control over their magic. They forced the opponents to take out their trump cards. It feels like 3 boxers are beating 50 kids. Chen Zhao shook his head. Indeed. It feels like even though they have the same magic power level, the realm is too different. After that, the 10 soul catchers attacked their comrades who were on the same side. And the first to suffer was Morad from the supernatural organization. Because he wasn't prepared, Morad's soul was pulled out by one of the soul catchers and thrown to the other side. Chen Zhao frowned when he saw his subordinates being betrayed and hurt. Normally, Chen Zhao would really go up and beat them to death. But this was the arena, and it was public. Furthermore, the other party's actions were allowed in principle. At most, it was a moral problem. So, Chen Zhao just sat there and clenched his fists. He really wanted to rush down and beat them up. But he resisted in the end. Forget it. I'm not watching anymore. In the end, Chen Zhao picked up Jerlin and planned to leave. Great, I'm not going to keep watching either. Let's go, Bifla said, standing up. Aren't you going to wait for your team to go up? They've already gone up. 3 were eliminated. 7 advanced. Chen Zhao looked at the center of the arena. The supernatural organization's team would probably eliminate a few people too. But because the soul catchers had ambushed their comrades and used their soul attacks, the other teams immediately took revenge. This caused the situation to go out of control. The other teams didn't care about the 3 puppets at all. They all turned to the soul catchers. Walking to the edge of the audience seats, Chen Zhao couldn't help but look at the battle in the arena. A bunch of bastards who harm others without benefiting themselves. Chen Zhao cursed again. Their magic didn't have any effect. Instead, it messed up their formation. Plus, they weren't that powerful. They were beaten up by the other teams. The 10 soul catchers were all eliminated by their comrades. 9 Heavens Divine Emperor. Chapter 2331. Li Pan, where have you been these past 2 days? Ederson asked Li Pan. They'd heard that Li Pan had gone to work for Celestial Master Zhang. However, Li Pan's departure was extremely mysterious. And when she returned, she was also very mysterious. She didn't say a single word about where she'd gone. Nevertheless, everyone was still envious of Li Pan, who'd advanced directly. Work, Li Pan said. What work? Don't ask. Li Pan shook her head. She'd actually come out yesterday. However, she'd been hiding from her companions. She hadn't calmed down yet. She was worried that she'd blurt out everything she'd seen. If her companions found out, it might not be a good thing for them. Would Chen Zhao kill her to keep her quiet? Very likely. Forget it, Ederson said. You can tell us when you want to, as long as you're fine. How was your trial? Li Pan asked. Ederson shook his head bitterly. We were all eliminated. The trial this time was too difficult. Just then Ederson's phone rang. Hey Cliff. Ederson, Amber and I are in trouble. Can you lend us some money? Huh. What trouble? Where are you now? We're hiding in a small hotel. Give me the address. I'll go pick you up. After getting the address, Ederson hung up the phone. What happened? My friend Amber and Cliff, whom you've met before. They seem to be in some trouble. I'll go pick them up now. Do you know what's going on? Not sure yet. Let's go together. Maybe I'll be useful. Ederson thought for a moment and then nodded. The two drove to the hotel where Cliff and Amber were hiding. They found their room and pushed the door open. It was dark inside. The couple looked rather disheveled. There were also injuries on their faces. They seemed to have just fought with someone. Cliff, Amber, what happened to you? It's only been 3 days. How did you end up like this? Amber and Clive wanted to cry, but no tears came out. 2 days ago, we were driving on the street and got into a car accident. Car accident? I suspect that it was not an accident at all. It was a scam, Ampa said indignantly. That guy deliberately rushed into the road. Is it a scam? Ederson looked at Clive. I'm not sure. When the guy was hit by the car, he immediately jumped up and demanded compensation from us. We wanted to call the police, but he was very angry. He demanded compensation from us and prevented us from calling the police. At that time, we were also in a hurry and didn't want to continue entangling with that guy. So Ampa used the soulless spell to make that guy forget about the car accident for a short time. Ederson and Lapon could understand. They were all spiritualists. Normally, they wouldn't attack ordinary people. But if he encountered some trouble, the first thing he would think of was to use magic to solve the problem. It wasn't just Cliff and Ampa. Most spiritualists were the same. Although the rule of not harming ordinary people was like the sword of Damocles hanging over their heads, restricting the majority of spiritualists, most spiritualists could not do anything. However, most spiritualists had tried to play around the edges. This kind of borderline ball would be troublesome if someone pursued it. But very few people would be so bored as to pursue it. Clive and Ampa also took it for granted that their method of solving the problem was fine. Of course, this rule was useless against spiritualists like Chun Zhao. Even if Chun Zhao had used supernatural powers to destroy a gang, he would not be able to do so. No one could control him. Who could? There were only a few people in the entire spiritual world who could control Chun Zhao. They wouldn't cause trouble for him for a gang. What happened next? Ederson asked. Then a group of gangsters stopped us. The leader was also a spiritualist. He beat us up and demanded $100,000 as compensation. Otherwise, he wouldn't let us go. You mean a spiritualist and a gang of gang members? Ederson's face was filled with shock. Spiritualists had all sorts of identities in the world of ordinary people. However, it was rare for a spiritualist to join a gang meeting. To them, controlling a gang would be more beneficial to them. They wouldn't participate in it themselves, because if they were personally involved in it, they wouldn't be able to use magic to replace some violent methods. Because of the restriction of that rule, even if a spiritualist became a gang's fighter, he would have to use ordinary methods instead of magic. Therefore, capable spiritualists might try to control a gang in order to amass wealth, instead of doing things themselves. Of course, spiritualists who did not have the ability would usually stay away from gangs. From Cliff and Ampa's narration, Ederson and Li Pan roughly guessed it. That gang was indeed trying to scam them. However, they couldn't tell if they were trying to scam a spiritualist. Or maybe they just happened to meet them. Looking for trouble with spiritualists seemed more risky than normal people. In reality, it wasn't. Low-level and mediocre spiritualists were actually the easiest to bully. They didn't have any power or background. Plus, they were afraid of that rule. So they were even more restricted to normal people. There was once an incident where a gang controlled by a higher-level spiritualist targeted a lower-level spiritualist. Do you know their name? That spiritualist, Argentero. Ederson and Li Pan couldn't help but look at each other. Ederson asked again, "Are you sure that's his name?" Cliff nodded. "That's what he said. Is he an Indian?" "Yes. Do you know him?" "Don't you know the name?" Ederson asked. "No. You know that we're only in contact with the North American spirit world. The North American spirit world is only so big. Isn't this troublesome?" "Very." Ederson's expression was solemn. Argentero practices Hindu magic and is very powerful. He's also known as a rogue in the spirit world. Does no one care about him? It's not that no one cares about him, but most of the time, he doesn't leave any evidence. Even if someone with higher status and strength interferes, he can easily escape. Most of the time, his targets are people like you who don't have any background. Chapter 2332. Ederson's expression was uncomfortable. Argentero wasn't alone. He had a group of loyal subordinates, all spiritualists. His style was basically the same. He would go to a new place and control the local club or gang. Then, he would use the gang's regular people to attack the target. Although this was a routine operation, it was very troublesome for ordinary spiritualists like Cliff and Ampa. They would be bullied by regular gang members. If they dared to use magic to resist, they would be attacked by Argentero's trusted subordinates. Or they could threaten them directly and use their fear of rules to blackmail them. The targets they chose were all low-level spiritualists. They had no strength or background and were easy to bully. Once they chose the wrong target, they would decisively give up and retreat. This was why they could get away with it for so long. Ederson really wanted to help Cliff and Ampa, but Arhan Terrell and his subordinates weren't people he could go against. Li Pan was silent for a long time. Finally he said, "I'll see if I can find someone to help you solve this problem." Ederson turned to look at Li Pan in surprise. "Do you know anyone who can solve this problem?" "Yes," Li Pan said. "If he's willing to help, it'll be solved." "It's Celestial Master Zhang?" Li Pan shook his head. "No, but if he's willing to help, it'll be no different from Celestial Master Zhang." Ederson was even more surprised. After thinking for a while he asked, "It's that guy?" "Yes, it's him. He has that much power. He's very strong. He's just one person. He's enough." With that, Li Pan took out his phone and called Qin Zhao. "Hello, Mr. Qin? It's me. What's up?" I want to ask for your help. It's just a small matter for you. Go ahead." "It's like this." Li Pan told Qin Zhao the whole story. Qin Zhao was silent for 3 seconds on the other end. Then he said, "Sure." With that, Qin Zhao hung up. Li Pan felt like he was about to collapse. He sat on the edge of the bed. Although that guy is very powerful, there's no need to be so scared after a phone call, right? Ederson said with a frown. Even now, he still didn't have a clear understanding of Qin Zhao. Li Pan looked at Ederson and said, "If possible, I hope to never have any contact with him again." "Is there a need to be so scared?" Li Pan shook her head. She didn't dare to tell Ederson about what she had seen 2 days ago. The impact of Qin Zhao on her daughter's third night was too great. "Li Pan, is there really no problem? Are you sure that guy solved your problem?" "Don't worry. Since he agreed, there won't be any problems. Arhan Terrell isn't a common shaman. After all, Cliff and Ampa hadn't had much contact with the outside world of the North American supernatural world. That was why Archon Terrell was still a stranger to him." "What kind of background does that Archon Terrell have?" "He is a traitor of Hinduism. For a long time, he was hunted by the upper echelons of Hinduism, but he either escaped or was killed. The long period of escape allowed him to develop a very powerful combat ability, and he once won the title of Holy Glorious One in 2 consecutive Holy Glorious battles. Everything Cliff and Ampa knew about the Battle of the Holy Glory came from Ederson. That was why they didn't have a clear understanding of the holy battles either. What does the holy battles mean? Naturally, they thought that it was a kind of competition. The 10 people who obtain the title of Holy Glory each time are the 10 most outstanding spiritualists of their generation. Arhan Terrell obtained the title of Holy Glory twice 30 years ago and 20 years ago respectively. That is to say 30 years ago, he was one of the most outstanding spiritualists in the world. After 30 years, his reputation as a genius was gradually replaced by the news of his evil deeds, and people gradually neglected Arhan Terrell's strength. But after so many years, he will only become stronger, not weaker. Ederson looked at Li Pan. "That's why I'm doubtful that the person you found can solve this problem." Li Pan shook her head. "You can't understand how terrifying that guy is. That day when we fought him, he didn't even use 1/10 of his strength. Have you ever seen him display his true strength?" "Yes, but I don't know if what I saw was his full strength. Anyway, he's a terrifyingly powerful shaman. He's the scariest guy I've ever seen. I hope it's as you say. Since this Archon Terrell is the final winner of the 2 holy battles, why would he betray us?" Qin Zhao asked Bifla in confusion while carrying Jerlin. "Whether it's the power he's from or himself, he's a very strange guy," Bifla said. "Strange? This word sounds so awkward coming out of your mouth. Because when we talk about Archon Terrell and the power behind him, I can't think of any other word other than strange. Seems like the story behind this must be very interesting. Arhan Terrell is from a lower caste, and his wish is to marry a woman from a higher caste. He has taken a fancy to his teacher's daughter, and his teacher has promised him that if he can obtain the title of Holy Glory, then he will let his daughter marry him. Hearing this beginning, I think it's a poignant love story. But in reality, it's not a love story but a farce," Bifla said. Bifla said, "He obtained the title of Holy Glory for the first time, and went to his teacher, hoping that his teacher would agree to his request. His teacher also agreed to his request, but after marriage, he discovered that his wife was not a virgin. Although he was very unhappy, he eventually swallowed his anger and pretended that none of this had happened. Not long after, they had a child. Not long after. Yes, it's exactly what you think. And then, while he was participating in the Second Holy Glorious War, his wife got pregnant again. Is it what I think? Yes, his wife's second child isn't his either. Chapter 2333. People were always curious about gossip. Chen Zhao was the same, especially when it was a farce or a tragedy. It was a comedy in the eyes of a bystander. Arhan Terrell isn't an idiot, but his decisions are often like that of an idiot, Bifla said. Bifla said, because his wife cheated, he found the cheater and blackmailed him, hoping to get a large sum of compensation. Chen Zhao was speechless. His wife's lover is very rich and very powerful. Of course, he wouldn't be willing to give money to Arhan Terrell, so he bribed his teacher. After his teacher got the money, he actually helped an outsider to deal with his son-in-law, his student. When Arhan Terrell found out that his wife's cheating partner would rather give the money to his teacher than compensate him, he was furious. He went to his teacher to ask for a share of the money, but his teacher refused. Chen Zhao couldn't understand Arhan Terrell. His wife had put a dirty hat on him, but he wasn't moved at all. Instead, he was using this to get benefits. Then his teacher unilaterally announced that Arhan Terrell had betrayed the sect. At that time, Arhan Terrell didn't do anything against the sect, but he became a traitor. Isn't Arhan Terrell a little too obsessed with money? He's from a low-caste family. He's lived in the slums since he was young. To him, marrying a high-caste woman and earning a lot of money is his life goal. Under the caste system, high-caste women can't marry low-caste men. I can't believe he has such a big goal. To an outsider like Chen Zhao, the caste system was just a joke. But after he left the sect, he blackmailed that rich man for a large sum of money. This time, there were no restrictions, so he didn't have to worry when he blackmailed. In the end, he still gained a lot. Because of this, he fell in love with the benefits of blackmail. In the past decade, he's been blackmailing people. Does no one care about him? That's why I said he's actually a smart person. He's like a fish in water when it comes to blackmailing. He can always avoid the big shots and doesn't leave any evidence. Before they knew it, the two had arrived before a manor. There was a wooden sign at the door with standard slang written on it. Because Chen Zhao had interacted with the gangs in LA before, he could recognize some of them. There was a graffiti of a rabbit holding a shotgun and a smile on the wooden sign. However, Chen Zhao and Bifla didn't care about such slang. What does the pattern on this sign mean? Do you know that there was a war between humans and animals in Australia? I don't know. Bifla shook his head. Due to the rapid reproduction of Australian rabbits, a large number of fields were destroyed by them. Humans began to use all kinds of methods to kill the rabbits, such as smuggling, introducing foxes, and even using human armies and fighter jets to bomb them. In the end, all of them ended in failure. The rabbits won with their terrifying reproductive ability, so the rabbits were used by the gangs later on. They compared themselves to rabbits. As long as there was suitable soil for them, they could survive and reproduce. Nothing could destroy them, and all their enemies would fail. What an arrogant declaration. Just as they were about to enter the manor, they were stopped by the gang members at the gate. The gangster who came out from the guard post had a gun at his waist without hiding it. Stop, who are you people? Smiling, Chen Zhao looked at the gangster. We're here to see Mr. Arhan Terrell. You know Mr. Arhan? The gangster looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla, noticing that they were dressed well. He wondered if they were the representatives of other gangs. In their impression, the representatives of certain gangs were all like them, dressed in suits and leather shoes. Wait. The gangster took out his walkie-talkie. Hey, Mr. Roy, there are two people at the door. They say they want to see Mr. Arhan. Yes, I got it. Who are you people? Why are you looking for Mr. Arhan? You don't need to know who we are, Chen Zhao said calmly. As for why I'm looking for Mr. Arhan, you don't need to know either. You don't think anyone can see Mr. Arhan, the gangster said viciously. Bifla glanced at Chen Zhao. You shouldn't waste too much time with trash like this. Say it. The gangster pulled out his gun and pointed it at Bifla's temple. Say it again. Bifla pointed casually, and a pile of ashes scattered in the wind. Look, there's no one making noise in our ears here. Fine, maybe you're right. Chen Zhao shrugged. The gang's headquarters didn't seem to be very well guarded. They had killed a man in public, and no one else knew about it. They walked all the way to the villa, but no one stopped them. However, there were 2 bodyguards in suits standing in front of the villa. Hey, who are you people? Stop right there. Bifla and Chen Zhao didn't stop. I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me? The 2 bodyguards pointed their guns at the 2. But the next moment the 2 turned into ashes. They pulled open the glass door and saw a group of people gathered inside. They seemed to be having a meeting. They were all spiritualists. Arhan Terrell stopped talking and frowned at the 2 intruders. He frowned at the 2 intruders. Who are you people? Who's Arhan Terrell? Chen Zhao scanned the crowd. Because there were 3 or 4 dark-skinned Indians here, Chen Zhao couldn't recognize Arhan Terrell. Arhan Terrell looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla. You better answer my question immediately. I'm not a patient person. Coincidentally, we're not very patient people either. Chen Zhao looked at Arhan Terrell. You must be Arhan Terrell, right? Why are you looking for me? I was invited by Cliff and Ampa to help them solve their problem. Right, the couple that you blackmailed 2 days ago. They invited you to help them solve their problem. Arhan Terrell narrowed his eyes and looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla. Did you bring money? We didn't, but we still brought our sincerity. We personally came to tell you that this matter ends here. Haha, that's very sincere. Arhan Terrell laughed loudly, and the others followed suit. Chapter 2334. Suddenly, Arhan's expression turned furious. He slammed the table in front of him. The table was smashed into pieces by Arhan Terrell. Arhan Terrell's face looked like he was wearing a mask, revealing a hideous and terrifying face that did not belong to a human. At the same time, a 3-meter-tall Dharma appeared behind him. What gave you the courage? Do you really think that I can forgive your offense with just a few words? I'll also make you commit the great sin of blasphemy. Arhan Terrell exuded an indescribable pressure. Everyone's expressions turned solemn and respectful. Blasphemy? Is he telling us that he's a god? Bifla and Chen Zhao both looked at each other with contempt. At their level, they'd seen all kinds of things. The guy in front of him, who had turned into such a strange appearance, had the nerve to call himself a god? Wasn't the title of god too cheap for him? Seeing Chen Zhao and Bifla's disbelief, Arhan became even more furious. Arhan Terrell was even angrier. The 3-meter-tall Dharma behind him pointed at Chen Zhao. A beam of black light shot toward Chen Zhao. The black light landed on Chen Zhao, and he took a step back. Bifla stared at Chen Zhao in shock. He didn't think that Chen Zhao would be pushed back. Even if he had only taken a small step back, this small step meant a lot. This meant that Arhan Terrell could shake Chen Zhao. But Arhan's shock was no less than Bifla's. He'd used that attack to establish his dominance, so he hadn't held back at all. But his full-powered attack had only made Chen Zhao take a small step back. It wasn't reasonable, very unreasonable. The spell he used was one of the most powerful spells of Hinduism. It was a spell of Shiva. It was said that anyone hit by it would be sent flying, unless they had the power of the Ganges River. Even if a mountain were to stand in front of him, it would still be shaken. Of course, Arhan's power wasn't that great. But in the past, everyone hit by his spell would definitely be sent flying. Most of them would be corpses. Even if they didn't die, they were heavily injured. No one would only take a small step back like Chen Zhao did. Chen Zhao was the one who found it the most unbelievable, because he didn't feel any irresistible power. This power was far from being able to shake Chen Zhao. However, he was still forced back a step by this force. You were moved by him? Bifla asked in astonishment. I don't know. His power is a bit strange. I wasn't pushed back by his spell. I was pushed back by this power. Is that so? Bifla looked at Arhan Terrell. Try attacking me with that spell. Arrogant, let me be your opponent. A man stood up next to Arhan Terrell. He was also of Indian descent. His aura wasn't weak, only half a level lower than Arhan Terrell's. Bifla glanced at the man and said, Small fries shouldn't disturb me. Bifla casually snapped his fingers. In an instant, the body of the man that Bifla called a small fry was instantly ignited. Seething fire. The attack of the 8-meter Dharma idol landed on Bifla's body. But Bifla didn't feel anything. Chapter 2335. The seething flame could make the opponent's blood boil. But Bifla remained unmoved, allowing the flames to burn its body. Be it inside or outside of his body, he couldn't feel anything. More accurately, it didn't make Bifla feel uncomfortable. Bifla himself was a master of playing with fire. Bifla shook his head. Change to another spell. This one is too weak. Archon Terrell was both embarrassed and angry. How could his magic be called too weak? But as he continued to try other spells, to his horror, he realized that the magic he'd once been proud of was completely meaningless to Chen Zhao and Bifla. Archon Terrell was treated as a toy by Chen Zhao and Bifla. Apart from incantation, all other spells were useless against Chen Zhao and Bifla. He had never encountered such an enemy before. It was so powerful that it seemed to be a different kind of creature. This kind of strength was unreasonably strong. As for the effect of moving because of him, that effect was only to make them take a step or two back. Boring, really boring. Bifla shook his head. Aren't there any more interesting spells? Archon Terrell saw Bifla raise his hand. In an instant, he felt his hair stand on end. Bifla's finger was about to touch him. I have other spells. Archon Terrell screamed in terror. At this moment, Bifla's finger was already pointing at him. Archon Terrell suddenly felt the air pressure surging behind him. He twisted his neck with difficulty. He saw the scene behind. Half of the villa disappeared, leaving only the raging flames in the air. All right. Bifla withdrew his attack at the last moment. At least it did not land on Archon Terrell. I have a powerful magic that is known to be able to destroy everything. It's called the Third Eye. Oh, the Third Eye. I've heard a lot about it. Bifla had heard of this spell before. Archon Terrell was a Shiva, a branch of Hinduism. As one of the 3 great gods of Hinduism, Shiva was also known as the three-eyed god of destruction. The magic third eye that Archon Terrell mentioned was naturally Shiva's third eye. Come, let me see you open your third eye. Before beckoned with his finger. I can't use it. Archon Terrell looked at Bifla with a troubled expression. Are you toying with me? Bifla's tone instantly turned cold. No. I have the cultivation method for the third eye, but I can't cultivate it. Archon Terrell quickly said. I'm willing to give this magic book to the 2 sirs. Archon Terrell hurriedly took out the magic book he had kept for himself. Bifla flipped through it a few times, and then threw it at Archon Terrell's face. My lord, this is real. This is authentic. I didn't lie to you. Bifla said calmly. Of course I can tell if it's real or fake, but I feel that you're lying to me. The magic of Hinduism can only be practiced by believers. I'm not a believer of Hinduism. Chen Zhao picked up the magic book with interest and flipped through it. So, this spell is completely useless. At least it's useless for you and me, Bifla said. Chen Zhao shook his head in pity. He looked at the magic book in his hand. For some reason, he just felt that this thing was good. Huh, you seem to care about this magic book. I feel that it's good. Really? You actually feel that? Looks like this magic book is indeed good. Bifla didn't disagree. Instead, he agreed with Chen Zhao. Chapter 2336. Since you've taken the spellbook, then he's my trophy, Bifla said, pointing at Archon Terrell. Spoils of war? Is there something wrong with your understanding of trophies? That spell of his is very interesting. Aren't you curious as to why that spell could shake you? Chen Zhao glanced at Archon Terrell. He was indeed curious. After all, Archon Terrell was so weak, but he could shake Chen Zhao with the spell. What if someone else used the same spell? What if it was Bifla instead? Chen Zhao had to admit that this spell also made Chen Zhao jealous. However, he couldn't just stuff all the good stuff into his pocket. I'll study his spell, and you study the third eye spell. If we make any breakthroughs, we can share them. What do you think? Sure, Chen Zhao agreed readily. The two didn't care about Archon Terrell's attitude at all. His personal opinion wasn't important either. Then, Chen Zhao took out his phone and called Li Pan. Okay, it's done. Li Pan didn't expect it to be over so quickly. However, thinking of Chen Zhao's strength, Li Pan felt that it was reasonable. Where's that Arhan Terrell? Is he dead or alive? He's alive now, but I'm not sure how long he can live. My friend thinks he's fun, so he brought him back, Chen Zhao said calmly. Li Pan remembered that she'd seen Bifla beside Chen Zhao before. That person didn't communicate with Chen Zhao. Even if he wasn't as scary as Chen Zhao, his status and strength wouldn't be too far off. From Chen Zhao's tone, it seemed like he didn't even have to worry about the consequences. After hanging up, Li Pan looked at Ederson, Amber and Cliff. It's done. Done. So fast. Ederson's reaction was exactly the same as Li Pan's. It had only been an hour or so. It was done just like that. Could that guy be one of Li Pan's friends? Cliff and Amber were thinking the same thing. They didn't know who Li Pan had asked for help. However, such a short time was probably enough for a car ride. What problem could it solve? Don't worry, Li Pan said. That person has the ability. Really? He doesn't need to lie to me. I can only entrust him with a small favor. At this moment, Li Pan even somewhat regretted her refusal and unwillingness that day. Li Pan could have made Chen Zhao owe her a big favor. But in the end, she didn't get anything. Maybe that $1 million check was a fortune to her. But Li Pan wasn't stupid. She knew that $1 million check was nothing compared to a favor. Even if Chen Zhao could fulfill her most basic request, it would still be worth more than $1 million. Moreover, the third night seemed extremely dangerous. But with Chen Zhao's protection, it wasn't as dangerous as imagined. Of course, Ederson was still worried and said, Cliff Ampa, stay here for the time being. I'll go out and ask around. Yes, thank you. It's nothing. It's not a big deal. Ederson was quite loyal. Don't worry. If there's really no way to resolve this, I can arrange for you to return to Los Angeles through other channels. After comforting Cliff and Ampa, Ederson left the motel with Li Pan. Li Pan, tell me the truth. Does that person really have the ability to resolve my friend's problem? Ederson, I know you don't have a good impression of him, but you can't deny his ability. I'm not talking about his character. I just want to know if my two friends are safe. Since he said it's resolved, then it's resolved. If you don't believe me, you can investigate it yourself. Ederson was still doubtful about Li Pan's words. So, he took out his phone and dialed a number. Walter, do you know Arhan Terrell? Instantly, a hurried voice came from the other end. You did the Wahan Manor in the suburbs? What Wahan Manor? What did I do? I don't understand. If you don't want to tell me, then forget it. I won't say anything. I really don't understand what you're saying. You're still pretending. I really don't understand what you're saying. You really don't know what happened in the Wahan Manor? I don't know. What does this have to do with Arhan Terrell? That's the headquarters of a gang controlled by Arhan Terrell. But 30 minutes ago, the place was razed to the ground. Not a single living person was seen. The only things found at the scene were some incomplete limbs and a few charred corpses. There were strong traces of magic at the scene, and Arhan Terrell disappeared without a trace. The strangest thing was the reaction of the organizers of Holy Glory. It was obvious that many ordinary gang members were attacked by spiritualists and died tragically. But the organizers of Holy Glory said that it was just an ordinary gang killing. They won't interfere in this matter. When Ederson heard Walter's words, his hair instantly stood on end. Is what you're saying true? This really has nothing to do with you. How could I have that kind of ability? That's true. But why are you asking about Arhan Terrell? I'm asking about Arhan Terrell. You've already told me everything, Ederson said solemnly. Fine. I'm sure now that you're playing with me. With that, Walter hung up. Ederson's mind was a bit muddled. So Li Pan was telling the truth? With just one call from Li Pan, that guy had slaughtered an entire gang? Actually, Chen Zhao was also being cursed by Zhang Tianyi. You asterisk shoal, Zhang Tianyi scolded. Even if you did it, can't you be more discreet? Do you have to make it so everyone knows? But Bifla killed everyone. I didn't kill anyone. Chen Zhao shrugged casually. So you should be cursing Bifla. Without hesitation, Chen Zhao pushed all the blame to Bifla, who had helped him carry his daughter. While playing with Jerlin, Bifla said, I'm helping Chen Zhao, so no matter how many people I kill, it'll be on him. I'm a pacifist. I told you to stop killing, but you can't stop yourself. Celestial Master Zhang, do you believe him? Chapter 2337. Zhang Tianyi clearly didn't believe him. Bifla's words couldn't be trusted either. But it didn't mean that Chen Zhao's words could be trusted. Chen Zhao was very murderous. It was normal for Bifla to kill all the gangsters. But it would be bullshit to say that Chen Zhao had stopped him. Their circle was only so big. Everyone knew each other. I've already suppressed this, but the impact is very bad. Chen Zhao and Bifla acted as if nothing had happened. Zhang Tianyi's words went in one ear and out the other. I didn't find Arhan Terrell's body in Wahan Manor, Zhang Tianyi asked. Where did he go? Chen Zhao looked at Bifla. He was obviously trying to sell Bifla out. Zhang Tianyi looked at Bifla. Where is he? What? Did someone ask you for him? Bifla asked. Not only did he ask for the person, he also asked for a magic book from me, Zhang Tianyi said. Just then, Chen Zhao and Bifla turned their heads at the same time, avoiding Zhang Tianyi's eyes. Zhang Tianyi was an old fox. Just from Chen Zhao and Bifla's actions, he knew that the item and person were in their hands. I can ignore the person who asked me for the item, but I have to share the item, Zhang Tianyi said righteously. It's not like it's anything good. Do they have to abandon their principles? The person who asked me for the item is Diko Wendis, the great guardian of Shiva. Since he's here, it means that Arhan Terrell's item isn't ordinary. But you don't have to be so shameless, right? According to my investigation, ever since Arhan Terrell betrayed the Shiva religion, he has never been hunted down by the Shiva religion. Apostasy is an unforgivable crime in any region, but the Shiva religion, which has always been known for its strict enforcement of the law, actually did not pursue Arhan Terrell. It can only be said that Arhan Terrell has something on the Shiva religion, or he has a precious treasure of the Shiva religion in his hand. The Shiva religion did not dare to pursue Arhan Terrell for fear of breaking the vases, and he also used the treasure as a protective talisman. Zhang Tianyi paused and said, Shiva religion is not a small religion. It is one of the largest religions in India. It is a big religion with at least 200 million people believing in it. The treasure that can be valued by a religion of this scale is definitely not something ordinary. Chen Zhao casually tossed the book onto the table. Take it if you want. Although Chen Zhao had thrown it out casually, he was actually quite reluctant. After all, Chen Zhao still felt that this magic book was unusual. All spiritualists believed in their own feelings. Chen Zhao was no exception. He rarely regretted having such strong feelings for something. For some supernatural items that he had obtained, it was either that he already knew the pros and cons of the item, or that it was not meaningful to him at all. Zhang Tianyi picked up the magic book. Just like Bifla, he flipped through a few pages, then shook his head and tossed it back onto the table. Not this. Diko Wendis didn't want this. That I don't know. That Arhan Terrell only took out this magic book. Zhang Tianyi frowned. Although the content of this magic book is quite advanced magic, it is restricted by the boundary wall. Diko Wendis would not come to me specifically for this kind of thing. He didn't say what magic book he wanted. No. Zhang Tianyi shook his head. Usually top spiritualists like them only talk to each other in private. Even if they wanted something, they would beat around the bush and would not say what it was directly. After all, the things that people like them wanted were all extremely precious. It would not be an exaggeration to say that they were rare treasures. If they knew their true intentions, it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't be greedy. Just like Zhang Tianyi right now, he looked like a sage in front of others. In reality, he was just a normal person with emotions and desires. He didn't even know what it was, and he was already greedy. Seems like the key is still with Arhan Terrell. Zhang Tianyi narrowed his eyes and looked at Chen Zhao and Bifla. Where is he? Zhang Tianyi's attitude was clearly not giving Bifla a chance to refuse. He's with my subordinates. Bifla thought for a moment and finally told Chen Zhao where Arhan Terrell was hiding. You didn't get anything from him? Zhang Tianyi asked. That would have to be in time, Bifla said in annoyance. I just made arrangements for him, and you came looking for me. If he knew how important Arhan Terrell was, he would be more careful. Take me to him, Zhang Tianyi said. Bifla could only accept Zhang Tianyi's request obediently. There was no need to say that he had to go against Zhang Tianyi, or that Bifla could compete with Zhang Tianyi. Whether it was in terms of mentality, status, or strength, Zhang Tianyi was still in the lead. Bifla brought Zhang Tianyi to his base in the suburbs. Chen Zhao followed them too. However, before they even got close to the base, the three felt a chaotic aura in front of them. Bifla, Zhang Tianyi, and Chen Zhao's expressions all changed. The three charged out of the car they'd been in. Bifla turned into a beam of fire and soared into the sky, charging toward the base. Chen Zhao carried little Zhilin. He wasn't flying slowly, but he wasn't fast either. At the moment, the base was already occupied by slaughter and chaos. The disciples of the fire worship sect were fighting against a group of unidentified men in black. It was also obvious that the group's strength, magic, and numbers were far greater than the disciples of the fire worship sect. This resulted in heavy casualties among the fire worship sect disciples. Only a few dozen people were still trying their best to resist the attacks of the men in black. Just then, a beam of fire descended with a rumble. Amidst the flames was Bifla, who was brimming with anger. Don't be fooled by Bifla's usual aloof and arrogant attitude. He ordered his subordinates, and the people around him. However, those who truly understood him knew how protective he was. He wouldn't allow others to bully his subordinates, let alone watch them being attacked and slaughtered. Hey, he's here so quickly! Among the men in black, a tall man saw the furious Bifla in the fire and called out in a low voice, "Stop him!" The tall man ordered his subordinates to stop Bifla, while he retreated alone. Two other men in black retreated with him. We've achieved our goal. There's no need to waste time with the sect of fire worship sect's leader here. Let's go. The furious Bifla walked toward the group of men in black step by step. All of you deserve to die. Chapter 23:38. However, in the next moment, the enraged Bifla's temperature dropped instantly. Naturally, this drop in temperature was a physical drop in temperature. The black-clad men in front of him suddenly joined forces and released a terrifying cold wave. In just an instant, Bifla was frozen into a block of ice. It was not just Bifla. Half of the estate was covered in ice and snow. The temperature in the estate dropped to 0 degrees Celsius. Sect leader. When the remaining fire worship sect disciples saw their sect leader being attacked, they immediately charged toward the black-clad men with all their might. The sect leader of the fire worship sect has a bad temper, but he's so weak. Stop him. I'll go kill the sect leader of the fire worship sect. The black-clad men discussed for a moment. Two of them stayed behind to block the fire worship sect disciples, while the rest charged toward the block of ice that Bifla had turned into. As long as they broke the block of ice, they would be able to kill the sect leader of the fire worship sect. To any spiritualist, getting rid of the sect leader of a large sect was an unparalleled honor. The fire worship sect was one of the top sects in the Central Asia. It was considered a first-rate religion in the world. Therefore, these black-clad men were already imagining the honor they would receive after killing Bifla. However, at this moment, the block of ice suddenly exploded. Countless ice shards flew in all directions. Everyone at the scene was so frightened that their expressions changed drastically. However, the strange thing was none of the fire worship sect disciples were injured by the ice shards that flew in all directions. None of them were injured no matter how close they were to the ice shards. On the other hand, the black-clad men who were close to the ice shards had turned into beehives. Those who were further away were injured as well. Bifla's eyes were wide open, filled with indescribable fury. The temperature in the fire worship sect's estate was rising rapidly. It was not accurate to say it was rising. It was turning into a purgatory. The rage in Bifla's eyes seemed to want to burn all of his enemies to ashes. When the fire worship sect disciples saw their sect leader unleashing his invincible might, they knelt on the ground in excitement. They could feel Bifla's warmth. The flames did not harm them at all. Instead, they were healing their injuries. However, to the black-clad men, it was an unprecedented pain. Bifla could kill all of them at any moment. But he didn't. What he needed now was to vent his anger. The clothes of the men in black began to melt and stick to their skin. Let alone attacking Bifla. They couldn't even face Bifla right now. The three men in black who had escaped first were flying forward at high speed. One of the women pulled down her veil and looked in the direction of the fire worship sex estate. At this moment, the fire worship sex estate was engulfed in flames. Although they were a few kilometers away, they could still feel the scorching aura and terrifying pressure coming from behind them. Brad, it looks like those people won't be able to stop the sect leader of the fire worship sect for long. Fortunately, we made a move first. If we were to face the sect leader of the fire worship sect, our outcome might not be any better than those fellows. At this moment, a figure appeared in front of them. The moment the three men in black saw that figure, their scalps went numb. Zhang Tianyi, the #1 expert in the supernatural world. The sect leader of the fire worship sect was like a little brother to him. At this moment, Zhang Tianyi was flying in the air toward the fire worship sex estate. However, when he saw the three people running over, he couldn't help but slow down. Yo, Zhang Tianyi chuckled. The expressions of the three men in black were unprecedentedly grim and nervous. Brad, the woman who took off her veil softly snorted. I know. Brad also took off his veil. He deviated from his original direction and blocked Zhang Tianyi's way. Greetings, Lord Celestial Master. Zhang Tianyi stopped as well. He looked in another direction and saw two graceful figures flying past him. Tiske, what a pity. I prefer to fight young and beautiful girls. Zhang Tianyi had a regretful expression on his face. Lord Celestial Master, I know I'm no match for you. However, please stop for the time being. Since Bifla wants to spare your life, don't make a move. Just obediently surrender. Lord Celestial Master also has times where he miscalculates. We're here not because the sect leader of the fire worship sect wants to spare our lives. It's because he doesn't have the ability to keep us here. We're leaving openly in front of him. Hee hee. Zhang Tianyi laughed mockingly. You? Leaving openly in front of Bifla? Aren't you overestimating yourselves? If Bifla isn't willing, none of you will be able to escape. The sect leader of the fire worship sect is only Esoso. If he really had the ability, he would have caught up to us by now. He didn't chase us because he's currently transforming into a demon. He doesn't want me to see him losing control. At the same time, he doesn't want to kill you because he lost control. It's not that he doesn't have the ability to chase us. If he doesn't even know Bifla's strength, how can he escape from him? Lord Celestial Master, do you know that I'm holding you back now? Brad said with a smile. My attitude is the same. Unless I'm willing, those two girls won't be able to escape from me. Then why did you let them go? Because there's an even worse fellow waiting for them behind. An even worse fellow? Is there anyone more terrifying than Lord Celestial Master in this world? I don't know if he's scarier than me, but he's definitely everyone's nightmare. Zhang Tianyi said with a smile. All right, you've delayed for so long. It's about time to show your abilities. Oh Senna, there's another aura in front. The two masked women looked at the figure in front. It was a man carrying a child. He had an Asian face. Kill him. Carrying little Jerlin, Chen Zhao strolled toward the sect of fire's base. Seeing the two men in black charging toward him, Chen Zhao held little Jerlin with his left hand and reached out with his right. Just then, a woman had already charged before Chen Zhao. She was very fast. But no matter how fast she was, she couldn't be faster than Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao reached out and grabbed. But Chen Zhao realized that his hand was empty. The woman's body actually passed through Chen Zhao. She didn't turn into energy. Instead, she turned into an incorporeal body. Chen Zhao was surprised. He didn't expect the woman to be incorporeal. And he couldn't attack her at all. The moment the woman passed through Chen Zhao, she chopped at the back of his head with her hand. But her attack was also useless against Chen Zhao. Nicole! I know. The two women were shocked. They didn't expect their attacks to be unable to hurt Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao turned around and punched at the woman behind him. But Chen Zhao's punch also missed. What's going on? Chen Zhao didn't expect that even his punch couldn't hit the woman. Chapter 2339. This time, Chen Zhao gathered the power of the world and punched. But it still missed again. This woman couldn't be attacked at all. But her attacks could hit Chen Zhao again and again. This made Chen Zhao very unhappy. "Nicole, attack the girl in his arms," Asuna called from afar. Nicole immediately turned to attack Zhilin in Chen Zhao's arms. Chen Zhao was instantly enraged. But he still couldn't do anything to Nicole. For Zhilin's safety, he could only retreat temporarily. At the same time, a black veil covered Nicole. But the result still disappointed Chen Zhao. After the black veil fell, Nicole still stood where she was unharmed. She hadn't been swallowed by the dark lava. Since the enemy could change targets, couldn't he? Since he couldn't do anything to this woman called Nicole, he'd change targets. Chen Zhao suddenly charged at Asuna. Chen Zhao was carrying Zhilin, so he couldn't move at full speed. But he was confident that he was fast enough. However, Chen Zhao's fist missed again. The moment Chen Zhao's fist missed, he immediately retreated. Damn! What kind of spell did these two women use? He couldn't be hurt at all. Didn't that mean he was invincible? "Nicole, we still have 30 seconds. If we can't end the battle in 30 seconds, we should retreat," Asuna said in a low voice. "No need. Just 10 seconds. With that, Nicole slashed through the air. A palm print landed on Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao immediately felt a wave of power flow into his body. In an instant, his magic power seemed to have stopped flowing. At the same time, he fell from a dozen meters in the air. Chen Zhao hurriedly steadied himself and tried his best to protect Zhilin in his arms. But Nicole's attack came again. Chen Zhao panicked too. He stomped heavily on the ground. The ground was shattered by his stomp and gravel flew everywhere. But just then Asuna, who was far away, dodged the flying gravel in a panic. As Chen Zhao dodged Nicole's attack, he also noticed Asuna's dodging. This doesn't make sense. When he attacked her just now, she clearly ignored all his attacks. She was the same as Nicole. Why was it that she was in such a sorry state just because of the scattered gravel? Chen Zhao was confused, but since she had dodged, it meant that she was not immune to damage. Chen Zhao's retreating colleague punched the ground again. Once again, countless gravel splattered everywhere. But the strange thing was that Osena didn't dodge again. What was going on? Why didn't it work this time? But just then, Chen Zhao realized that Nicole, who had been attacking him, had actually retreated. In that instant, Chen Zhao's thoughts cleared up. At the same time, only one of them could be absolutely immune to any damage. However, the other person was not immune to the damage. There was some kind of connection between them. "Nicole, let's go." Osena saw that Chen Zhao had tested them twice in a row, and knew that Chen Zhao had found out their secret. It was no longer a question of whether they could get rid of Chen Zhao. Instead, it was a question of whether they could leave. If they delayed too long, once Baifla and Zhang Tianyi caught up, they really wouldn't be able to escape. Although the two of them had special abilities, it didn't mean that they were confident that they could defeat Baifla and Zhang Tianyi. Nicole glared at Chen Zhao, and then turned to leave. But now Chen Zhao was annoyed. No one had ever been able to come and go as they pleased in front of him. Chen Zhao looked at Nicole and Osena's backs. Unhurriedly, he picked up a stone and aimed it in the direction that Nicole and Olsen had escaped. Pop! The stone shot at Nicole, but it missed. The stone hit the forest in front of Nicole. In an instant, all the plants on the branch collapsed. It was as if a cannonball had pierced through the entire line. This time, it was Nicole and Osena's turn to explode. Such terrifying destructive power. The two couldn't help but look at Chen Zhao behind them. Chen Zhao was still holding little Zhilin. With the other hand, he flicked his fingers in their direction. "Guess who I'll shoot this time?" The two women stared at Chen Zhao in fear. If Chen Zhao had shot one of them with a special ability, they would all be unscathed. But if Chen Zhao had shot the one without special powers, he would have been killed. The one who was shot would definitely die. Imagine what it would be like to be shot by a sniper bullet. Just the airflow from a sniper bullet's trajectory could cripple a person's limbs. If it hit any other part of the body other than the limbs, it was almost certain death. On the other hand, Chen Zhao's pebble was many times stronger than a sniper rifle's bullet. Just then Nicole said, "Sir, do you believe that the moment you attack my sister or I will have enough time to kill the girl in your arms?" Chen Zhao flicked his finger hard. Pop, boom. Amidst the terrifying sound waves, there was an unparalleled impact. However, the stone missed again. But this lethality still scared Nicole and Asuna. This time, Chen Zhao grabbed a handful of stones from the ground. Nicole and Ursina's nerves were taut. Papa, shoot that bad woman. Jerlin suddenly pointed at Osena. Huh. Why? Because I saw a shadow run onto her, Jerlin said. Shadow? What kind of shadow? Ah, it ran onto that bad woman again. Jerlin pointed at Nicole. Darling, how did you know? I saw it, Jerlin said. What kind of shadow? Chen Zhao asked. Jerlin had the protection of a guardian angel, so she could also see things that Chen Zhao couldn't. Chen Zhao already knew about this. Jerlin had also awakened the nirvana magic. Over the past 2 days, Chen Zhao could feel Jerlin's magic growing in his body. This bit of magic was very weak for a regular spiritualist, but Jerlin was only a little over a year old. At least among children of the same age, not to mention those who had not awakened. Even those who had awakened might not have as much magic power as little Jerlin. Like a shadow on the ground, Jerlin said. Chen Zhao was stunned. He couldn't see the shadow moving between the 2 women like Jerlin had said. But under the 2 women's feet, one had a shadow, and the other didn't. A smile appeared on Chen Zhao's face. Nicole and Osena immediately felt that something was wrong. Their biggest secret had been completely exposed. And the person who would truly see through their secret was a baby who hadn't weaned yet. Of course, if Jerlin knew what they were thinking, she would definitely retort loudly. I'm weaned. Chapter 2340. But no matter what Jerlin thought or what they thought, Chen Zhao just wanted to kill them. Chen Zhao only wanted to kill them now. Nico and Asuna knew that Chen Zhao's next attack would definitely kill them. Just then, 4 metal discs suddenly appeared in the sky. The 4 discs were all over 3 meters in diameter. All of them appeared very abruptly, without any warning. Chen Zhao didn't notice them either. Chen Zhao suddenly had a bad feeling. The 4 discs suddenly shot out 4 beams of light. The 4 beams all carried powerful water, earth, fire, and wind elements. Oh no! Chen Zhao suddenly picked up Jerlin and turned his back. At the same time, he erected a black screen on the black lava. But the screen was instantly penetrated. Chen Zhao picked up Jerlin and ran. The 4 beams of light still chased after him, leaving 4 ditches in the ground they swept past. Chen Zhao tossed out the stones in his hand casually. Countless stones hit the 4 discs. The discs clanked, but they weren't damaged. However, under the impact of the pebbles, the 4 metal discs spun in the air like gyroscopes. The 4 beams of light also lost control and deviated. The surrounding ground was left with spiral-shaped ditches. At this moment, the 4 metal discs gradually disappeared in midair. When Chen Zhao looked at Nico and Asuna again, he realized that they'd disappeared too. Ran. No, they couldn't be that fast. No matter how fast they ran, could they leave Chen Zhao's sensing range instantly? The 2 women were definitely nearby, but they were extremely special. Chen Zhao couldn't lock onto them. This was probably related to their strange attack immunity spell. Since he couldn't sense them, he couldn't tell who was real and who was fake. Where did that guy come from? I don't know. I've never heard of him. Good thing we avoided his eyes and ears. Otherwise, we'd be in big trouble. How long do we have to hide here? Asuna looked up at Chen Zhao in the distance. We can hide for as long as we want. Why isn't he leaving? Nico also looked in Chen Zhao's direction. The 2 of them were currently using telepathy to communicate. Because they were sisters and had a very special relationship, they didn't even need to exchange glances to know each other's thoughts. Chen Zhao searched the surroundings repeatedly, but he still found nothing. Suddenly Chen Zhao's eyes narrowed. He thought of an idea. Chen Zhao grabbed a stone slab from the ground. This stone slab weighed at least a few hundred kilograms. Then, Chen Zhao threw it heavily. In an instant, all the vegetation along the path of the stone slab was instantly flattened. Everything in front of him suddenly became clear, and all the obstacles disappeared. Even the bulging mound was flattened in an instant. The power of this stone slab was many times stronger than that of the pebble from before. The effect it could produce was naturally extraordinary. Of course, he wouldn't admit that it wasn't that he didn't want to kill them. It was just that he hadn't found the chance. Don't be careless. These 2 women use a strange spell. One of them can ignore all attacks, and can switch at any time. Bifla glanced at Nicole and Asuna. He lifted 2 fingers and shot out 2 death rays. 2 death rays shot toward Nicole and Asuna at the same time. Poof! The death ray pierced through Asuna's body and blood splattered. However, Nicole stood there unscathed. Really? Bifla was also shocked. Even though he was knowledgeable, he'd never seen such a spell. Bifla didn't kill them. He'd already vented enough. He was still angry, but he could control it now. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.